Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests.
I'm sorry. Welcome. As soon as I went to go live, the lovely gentleman from Japan that has been working on my Discord channel called me, and I couldn't leave. I'm sorry. So welcome. Now I have put his link in chat for anyone who is a gamer, particularly Minecraft. He is awesome. So he has a YouTube channel right there. Oh, that font's a bit funky, isn't it? A tad funky. Let's change that, shall we? Oh, so I apologize for my lateness, but this channel, the Discord channel, has just been released, and it was just trying to iron out some last minute changes. So I do apologize. But welcome. Now I noticed last night when I set up the that's better, I can read it now. When I set up the stream, that today's court only goes for 2.5 hours. So I thought we could do at least make a start on day 4. If you guys are keen to keep going at that time, because the day 4 is running today, which is up to date. So yeah, all right. So yes, if you would like to join, that is the lovely gentleman from Japan who has set up my Discord server, and it's lovely, just amazing. And if you're into Minecraft, go and check him out. Give him a like and a sub, because hey, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I had a call from Japan, who's the guy that's set up my Discord, just as I was hitting the live, and I couldn't leave. It will be good. Look, I'll calm down now. I was having a tanty. Poor Udah's trying to tell me what to do, and he's like, "I pinged you." I'm like, what's that? Like, talk a different language. I have no idea. So now we just need to we need to get with the cocks. Bring the Cochrans. All righty. Luckily, I was organised and had it all. I feel like I've just been like running around like a dickhead. Yeah, probably because I have. Did we all like my new logo, my new avatar? I saw it. Oh, yeah, no, it's okay. It's all right. It's like an antivirus thing saying we've detected a breach, but we've fixed it. It's all good. You don't have to do anything, madame. It's only because you're an admin that you get to see that. All right. Get my breath back, and let's do it, shall we?
Good morning, all.
Oh, if you spot a hottie, Udah doesn't have his headphones today, so we have to type it. So if he doesn't answer you straight away, that's why. Okay.
Gentlemen of the jury, and welcome back. I'm glad to see your smiling faces, at least some smiling faces. I hope you rested well and you are ready to continue. Today is Friday, and so that's a happy thing. We are still on the state's case in chief, and we will get started right away. Mr. Truman, you may call your next witness.
Thank you.
I've heard the judge
Jason
speak
Bowen.
that much.
Can I have 8?
you'll raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated right there. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What's your name, please?
Jason Bowen.
And Mr. Bowen, tell us what you do for a living
I'm a general contractor. Do all aspects of construction.
and where are you currently working?
I have a company called Dreamcatchers Construction.
And do you operate locally here in Raleigh County?
No, I travel.
And currently, what projects are you working on, or just generally, where are you working?
I'm up north working on a church currently.
Okay. Let me take you back to 2019. Where were you then? Where were you working then?
In 2019, we was working for Mr. and Mrs. Cochran, doing various projects.
Was that your same company?
Mm-hmm.
And did you work full time for the Cochrans, or did you take other work as well?
No, we worked fully for Mr. and Mrs. Cochran.
Okay. Your Honor, due to poor planning, I forgot to turn on the equipment. If that's okay.
All right, we'll get you some assistance.
Okay. Did you work solely by yourself at the Cochrans, or did you have other people working with you?
No, it was me and my business partner, Jonathan Miller.
And Mr. Miller died as a result of a vehicle accident, is that correct?
He did.
Do you know approximately when Mr. Miller died?
It was March 30th of 2020.
Thanks. Did you turn the overhead on? Were you two partners in a company, or did you just work together?
Well, it was he had his company and I had my company, and we just kind of joined forces to work together.
Okay, but both of you were working essentially full-time for the Cochrans?
Yes.
On February 6th of 2019, do you recall receiving a text from the defendant at about 12:20 or so?
I do.
Where were you when you received the text?
We had just left Lowe's. We had gotten some painting supplies. We was working on a airplane hangar.
When you say we,
Me and Jonathan.
you and Jonathan Miller? Thank you. Yeah, that doesn't show up very well, does it? Let me just hand this to you.
Okay.
Hand you what's been marked as Stage 1 and ask you to take a look at the first text.
Mm-hmm. I recall this.
You do. And you received that while you were still at Lowe's with Mr. Miller?
We was actually in the truck leaving Lowe's.
What time did that text come in?
A little bit before 12.
Actually, if it shows right there, it's 12:21. Unfortunately, it's uniform time, so you have to adjust
Yes.
for 5 hours.
Yes.
Okay. And when you got that text, what did it ask you to do?
She was asking us to come to the house that Mike had gotten sick and was laying in the kitchen floor.
And she being the defendant?
Natalie, yes.
Okay. What did you do in response to that text?
We told her we was on our way and started to head straight there.
Do you know, and did you do that?
We did.
What time did you get to the Cochran house?
12:30, 12:35, maybe 12:40.
And when you got there, had she instructed you what to do when you got there?
She did. She told us they was in the kitchen. Just come on in.
Did you do that?
We did. We knocked, opened the door, and said hello. And she answered and said, "We're in here."
Had you been in the Cochran house before?
Many times.
So you knew where the kitchen was?
Yes,
Did you go into the kitchen?
we did.
And when you got in the kitchen, what did you see?
Mike was laying on the floor in a curled up position.
Now, you didn't get a picture of Michael, but the defendant sent it to a number of people. Is that what you saw when you got to the kitchen?
It was.
What did she tell you happened to him?
She said he had gotten sick at the sink and just kind of lowered himself down into the floor using a cabinet. And that's where he kind of ended up.
Had he hit his head or anything?
Not that I know of.
What was it? Just the three of you plus Michael at the time? You, the defendant, and Mr. Miller in the house?
Yes.
And what did you do?
She asked us to move him to the couch. So me and Jonathan got him kind of laid back where we could carry him safely. And then we carried him to the couch.
Did you talk to Mr. Cochran?
We was trying to talk to him several times, saying his name, Mike. Can you hear us? There was several times we tried to talk to him, yes.
Did you get a response from Mr. Cochran?
No.
From your assessment of what was going on, did you think just carrying him to the couch was sufficient?
Once we got him to the couch, we felt like he needed checked.
And by that, what do you mean?
He was not responsive. Jonathan actually did a sternum rub on him once we got to the couch, and he kind of responded. He groaned, but he did not. A sternum rub, you're going to come up out of that, and if you're lucid.
Did you ever hear Mr. Cochran on that day, February the 6th, 2019? Did he converse at all with anybody in your presence?
No.
Did he arouse at all and seem awake?
No.
How long were you at the Cochran house after you moved, Michael?
Maybe 20 minutes.
Did anybody else appear during that time?
Trooper Hamilton had came probably 5 minutes after we got there. He came through the front door.
Had you already moved Mr. Cochran to the couch from the kitchen by that time?
We had.
If I could have that one back, please. Mr. Bowen, was that the end of your communication with the defendant that day?
No, no, we had texted a few times back and forth trying to find out how he was,
And what were the reports in response to your questions?
that he was sleeping it off, or that no change.
And he never woke up while you were there.
No.
State move states 8 in evidence, please. You. States 8.
Are you moving for its admission?
We are.
Any objection, Mr. Victor?
No, Your Honor.
States exhibit number 8 will be admitted into evidence. That concludes the questioning of this witness on behalf of the state.
I did have one more. Did the defendant tell you her understanding of what Michael Cochran's plans were that day?
No, we was not in kind of plans for that day.
Not after he was sick. I mean, what was his intention before he collapsed?
They had mentioned that they was going to Virginia.
Do you recall being interviewed by Trooper Bledsoe?
I do.
Do you remember telling him that you thought that or did she said Mike was going to hang out with you and Jonathan at the hangar?
I do.
Okay. So was he going to hang out at the hangar with you or go to Virginia?
I don't know.
Okay. That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Victor.
Mr. Bowen, is it true that on February the 6th, early in the morning, you received the message from Michael that he wasn't feeling good and he would not be working on a hangar with you?
I do not recall.
You don't recall?
I don't recall. I can't remember.
You and Mr. Miller were actually working on a hangar, right?
We was.
And as you sit here today, you do not remember that message from Mr. Cochrane.
I do not.
Okay.
If you have a printout of the messages or something, I might be able to remember the conversation. But as we stand here, no.
You don't recall.
I do not.
You spent some time with Mr. Cochrane while working on various projects.
Mhm.
Would that be a yes?
It would. Yes.
Okay. And do you remember going with Mr. Cochrane to Lowe's to purchase some products or something for one of his construction?
Any specific time that he would go with us several times to Lowe's.
Well, let's say about a week prior to February the 6th. Well, let me strike.
Like I said, there's many times that we've been
All
there.
right. Do you remember the time when you were in Lowe's and Mr. Cochrane was not sure who drove the vehicle to Lowe's?
No, that is not that time.
Okay, what time was that?
You're speaking of a time when we was working on the airplane hangar. We had breakfast that morning.
Okay, what months could that be?
That would have been February.
In February. He was so confused that he didn't even remember driving his own car.
He remembered driving his truck. He just didn't remember where he parked.
I see. He wasn't confused about who drove the truck?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. He told you on several occasions that he felt sick.
Mhm.
How was he sick? What did he tell you?
It was after we got finished working on a house that he had gotten into some black mold. He would just complain about dizziness and stuff.
Did he complain about dizziness and lightheadedness in January of 2019?
I don't recall.
Did he complain about feeling sick in February, at the beginning of February of 2019?
I don't recall February. I would say more in December.
More in December. Well, he told you he had a seizure in, I would imagine, December or January, December of 2018 or January 2019, didn't he?
I don't recall him
You don't
telling me
recall.
about seizure. No.
Okay. And he told you at the beginning of February, didn't he, that he felt another one coming, didn't he?
No.
Now you're denying that? Okay. What did he complain of, sir, when he was telling you that he didn't feel good?
He would complain about just not feeling right, just feeling dizzy.
Not feeling right? How?
Felt like he said he felt like he'd been poisoned.
He felt like he was poisoned. All right. Did you witness Mr. Cochrane's illness in November of 2018?
I was with him in the hospital.
Okay. He lost consciousness, right?
He never lost consciousness. I think they sedated him while he was in the hospital.
He felt lightheaded. Right? He had a seizure, perhaps?
I don't know.
Okay. You don't really know the exact problems that Mr. Cochrane had that landed him in a hospital in November of 2018, do you?
No.
Okay. And he complained to you about the same symptoms in December and January, or December 2018 and January 2019, that he had when he went to the hospital in October or November of 2018, didn't he?
I wouldn't say it was the same symptoms. No.
No? You went to the Cochrane's home on numerous occasions, you testified.
I did.
Cochrane.
The bedroom in the Cochrane's home was upstairs, right?
All the bedrooms was.
Okay. And the kitchen was downstairs. And it was not directly, well, and the steps leading to, well, from upstairs to downstairs were not exactly leading straight to the kitchen. The kitchen was still some rooms away from the stairs, right?
Correct.
So if somebody well, let me strike that. Michael was a pretty big guy, wasn't he? How much did he weigh, to your estimation?
Probably 200 pounds.
200 pounds. And so if he was injected with some poison in bed upstairs, a singular person such as Natalie Cochran would have to drag him downstairs, all the way to the stairs, then downstairs, and then through the whole house into the kitchen, right? Would you consider that possible?
Assuming that's what happened.
Assuming that's what happened. There was nobody else in the house when you arrived, correct?
Correct.
With Mr. Miller, right?
Just me, Mr. Miller, yes.
And so the only person who would have injected him in the bed and upstairs and who would drag him downstairs would have been Natalie Cochran, right?
Cochrane.
Right, this is pretty speculative.
Yeah, I think it is. Is that an objection,
Okay.
Mr. Truman?
It is, I'm sorry.
I think I'll sustain the objection. And Mr. Bowen, if you could say yes or no, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
I'm having a little difficulty understanding your responses.
I apologize, Your Honor.
No problem.
Mr.
Go
Bowen,
ahead.
when you were, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Mr. Bowen, when you were in the Cochran's house on February the 6th,
Yes,
Did you observe my client, Natalie Cochran, checking Mr. Cochran's blood sugar?
I did.
She did that, didn't she? All right. You knew Mr. Cochran as a, well, let's say bodybuilder, an athlete, right?
He was definitely an athlete. Yes,
Yes. He really cared about his
his
physique,
physique. Mhm.
his health, his body.
Yes,
But he cared about his health in terms of his outward appearance, right?
he liked his inner. He liked feeling healthy.
He was what? I'm
He
sorry.
liked feeling healthy.
Feeling healthy.
That'd be nice.
And
I'd like to feel that
would you
sometime.
would you say that he was very happy when he was physically fit?
I would.
So in pursuit of that fitness, sir, would you agree with me that he was taking a lot of pills that were going to increase his appearance? Right?
I don't know about that. I know he took supplements. There's many kinds of supplements.
All kinds of supplements, right?
Yes.
To increase his vitality, to increase his physicality.
Yes.
Physicality.
Well, how many of the, well, do you know what those supplements were?
I do not.
Well, how many of them did he take?
I don't know.
And what
Well,
do you
you
mean
were
by
in the home
supplements?
frequently.
Like,
Did you witness Mr.
what do you mean by supplements? Is he taking vitamins? Is he taking protein shakes? Like, he needs to be a little bit more specific on that, because he makes it sound like he's doing, well, they did say he had to get it from Mexico. But as I said during the first stream, like the first day, he's married to a pharmacist. So why would he have to get whatever it is from Mexico when his wife is a chemist, a pharmacist? That doesn't make sense. So something dodgy going on there.
Cochrane taking as many as
Cochrane.
30 and 35 pills at a time?
I did not.
You did not?
Jesus.
What did you witness?
I never witnessed him taking any supplements.
Okay. So how do you know that he was taking supplements?
I'm calling
He told you?
He
bullshit.
told me.
Did you also know that he was injecting medicine into his body?
I did not.
Okay. Did he ever tell you that?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
What did Michael Cochrane do for a living?
He ran data cable, AV cable. It was his profession.
Okay. Well, did he have two businesses that he ran? TSM, TSG, whatever.
Yes, CSM. He ran with
Yeah, it
Natalie.
doesn't make sense to me.
Did he ever talk to you about the government contracts?
He
What
did.
say? What did he say
Uh,
he did for those government
I come
contracts?
up with them occasionally.
He said he would research the
Just
government
not on his
contracts
books.
online and send them to Natalie, and she would work on it, put a bid in.
He would research them, right?
He would find the contract, the specific listings for what they was doing.
Did you know that he suffered from brain swelling?
I was told yes,
Who told you that?
Natalie.
Did you?
Hearsay.
Were you curious after he came out of the hospital in November of 2019 what they told him about his health?
Yeah, I was curious. We was told that it was exposure to black mold.
It was just the exposure to black mold. Nobody mentioned anything about seizures. Nobody mentioned anything about enlarged heart. Nobody mentioned anything about brain swelling.
No.
Nobody. Okay. And who would that be? The doctors?
Natalie's who we got all of our information from.
Natalie. And did you inquire of Mr. Cochrane himself? Buddy, what's wrong with you? What was wrong with you? What did the doctor say? Did you ever inquire?
We would ask him how he's feeling today or something like that, but he never told us any kind of diagnosis or anything like that. We never really talked about it. Once we was in the hospitals, when we got the information, we would just see how he's feeling day to day.
Well, he went to the hospital on October 31st and came out of the hospital, right?
Yes,
And he knew you guys worked together. You were almost buddies, right?
we was buddies. Yes,
We were buddies. All right.
We was
Didn't you
buddies.
ask him, well, hey, bud, what did they say was wrong with you?
no,
No. But then he was in the hospital 2 days later with all these horrible symptoms and stayed in the hospital this time for 5 days. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. For 5 days. And you were there with him.
I was.
And then he comes out of the hospital and you do not bother to ask him, buddy, what did the doctor say? What was it?
It was always black mold exposure.
If I may have a second.
Certainly.
That's all I have of this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well. Redirect Mr. Truman.
State has one redirect question. In response to defense counsel's question, you said that the defendant took the vital signs of Mr. Cochran.
That's correct.
That's not mischaracterized my question.
I think it is perhaps, but you could ask the question straight out, Mr. Truman.
Okay. While you were there, did the defendant take vital signs of Mr. Cochran?
She did.
Now,
She
did you
did.
participate in any of that?
She
did not.
did.
Did you actually see the raw data?
I did not.
Did she tell you what the results of her taking those vital signs were?
She would say what it was, but I don't remember those numbers.
That's all the questions the state has, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Victor?
Were you there when the physician assistant arrived?
No, I was told to leave while she was on her way.
Okay. So you don't know whether any other person took any vital signs or temperature, vital signs, sugar level of Mr. Cochran.
No, Natalie's the only one I've seen.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Anything, Mr. Truman?
We know that the defendant had a working phone because she was able to text you, and you text back, correct?
Correct.
In your presence, did she ever call 911?
No,
Two objectives outside of the scope of my.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Did she?
no,
Were you and Jonathan Miller capable of loading Mr. Cochran into a car and taking him to the hospital?
very much so. Yes.
Did she ever suggest you do that?
No, we actually asked her if she wanted us to.
What was her response?
No,
That's all the state has.
Well, then in that regard, did you know from talking to Michael or anybody else for that matter, that Mr. Cochran refused to go to the hospital? And for that matter, that he would say that he will never again go to the hospital after his October and November 2018 experience.
he said he would never go back to Raleigh General Hospital.
Okay. He didn't like the hospitals, did he?
Who does?
Who does? So just because he was there at home doesn't necessarily mean that he wanted to be taken to the hospital immediately, does it? Especially that he didn't like going back to the hospital. Fair enough?
I don't know. I wasn't able to ask him.
Right. Okay. That's all.
Anything further?
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any reason to hold this witness over?
Not from the state's perspective. No, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowen. You may step down. You are excused, sir. Call your next witness, Mr. Truman.
State calls J.C. Stevens.
Your Honor, may we take just a moment before Mr. Truman questions Mr. Stevens? I need to confer with my colleague for just a moment.
Okay. Are you asking for a break or can you do it while we're all here?
Just a couple minutes.
Okay.
That means L. La 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 la.
All right, Mr. Truman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tell us your name, please.
My name is Joseph Stevens. My last name is spelled Stephen's.
And are you employed?
Yes, I currently work at the FBI laboratory in Quantico,
Hello,
Virginia,
Natalie.
FBI being the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And do you have a
Okay.
job title?
I do. I'm a chemist, forensic examiner at the lab there in the chemistry unit.
And what's your primary duties as
Maybe
a
he'll be able to
chemist
tell us
for
what
the
he was
FBI?
taking.
My primary duties are to receive evidence from contributors. Those contributors can be state, local, or federal partners. We receive that evidence through our evidence management unit. Then it's passed up to the individual units, such as myself.
Your Honor,
Come and say hello.
Could Mr. Stevens slow down just a little bit? I'm having a little trouble following his testimony.
All right.
Oh,
And perhaps you can scoot up a little bit towards the microphone and slow down just a little bit, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Little turd.
Go ahead, Mr. Truman.
Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
So we receive evidence from our evidence
You
management
little
unit.
shit.
It comes up to our chemistry unit where it's assigned to an examiner, such as myself.
Oh,
I then intake that evidence, check it in, determine what kind of evidence I have, what kind of analyses I need to do. And then I process that evidence and I issue a report. This will be a forensic report or a laboratory report. And then as needed, I testify to those observations and findings that I made.
Oh, you're a monster.
How long have you worked for the FBI?
I started working at the FBI in April of 2016, so I've been there for a little more than 8 years.
And you started as a forensic chemist, and that's what you do now?
That is correct.
And what kind of experience did you have before you went to work for the FBI as a forensic chemist?
Before the FBI, I worked at the United States Secret Service in Washington, D.C. They have a forensic document laboratory. There I performed instrumental analysis
Knocking everything off my
inks, papers,
desk.
and toners.
Stop it.
And I did that for about 10 years. I started there in December of 2005 through April of 2016.
Would you please share with us your educational background?
I earned a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Roanoke College in Virginia. After that, I attended Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. I did not earn a degree from that, but I transferred to the George Washington University, where I earned a Master of Science in Forensic Science in 2007.
Did you receive any specialized training in forensic chemistry?
Yes. So as part of my training at the United States Secret Service, I completed a 2-year training program there. And upon my arrival at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I completed another 2-year training program there as well.
In this particular case, do you have any specialized training that would qualify you to determine an analysis that would result in a finding of insulin?
Yes. So as part of our 2-year training program at the FBI, I conducted practicals, which I work with insulin, putting it on my instrumentation and analyzing it. And then I'm eventually given what's known as a competency test to ensure that I know how to perform the analysis.
Really?
And I successfully completed that competency test. And then there's also other components.
Sorry. He's rubbing himself all over my microphone, my keyboard. Stop it. What are you doing? Oh my God. Crazy cat.
And what were you asked to examine?
What are you doing?
Not only this, but the rest of the documents, the items we're going to review with you. What were you asked to examine them for?
What?
I was submitted 4 items. One of them was a box, and 3 of them were vials containing unknown substances or unknown liquids.
Plus.
I was asked to analyze the unknown liquids within those vials.
Plus, weirdo.
And there's another item in that package, correct?
Yes, there is.
You got pen, sticker pen.
Yeah.
I'll just put it on that package. All right. I'll bring it back to you.
What are you doing?
If you could put, probably the easiest way to do it. How do you want to
Let
handle
me
the
see
bottle?
what he's doing. It's just
Put it right on there. Yeah, that's anywhere. Bottom's fine. That's good.
what? What? It's mango.
And what's been marked for identification is
Oh, get off the bloody. Oh. Get off. Oh, oh shit. I don't even know where we're up to. I think he's still on my keyboard. Shit.
Science and Chemistry from Roanoke College in Virginia.
approach the witness.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Stephen, to hand you what's been
No,
marked at
there's
this
none,
point is
because
for
I've eaten them all.
identification as states
That's the last
9.
one about an hour ago.
And feel free to open the envelope and review it.
You can send me messages in that private message on Discord too. So you see, I've got it up the few. Oh, excuse me.
You familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Before we get to that point, how is it that States 9 came into your possession?
This case came in through our Pittsburgh field office, which is the field office responsible for this area. So it came in as a case submission to Pittsburgh.
And what were you asked to examine? Not only this, but the rest of the documents, the items we're going to review with you. What were you asked to examine them for?
I was submitted 4 items. One of them was a box, and 3 of them were vials containing unknown substances or unknown liquids. I was asked to analyze the unknown liquids within those vials.
And there's another item in that package, correct?
Yes, there is.
You got 10. Stick with 10. I'll just put it on that package. I'll bring it back to you. If you could put, probably the easiest way to do it. How do you want to handle the bottle? Put this, you can put it right on there. Okay. Yeah, that's anywhere. Bottom's fine. That's good. Anyway, what's been marked for identification is states 10. You identify that, sir?
The item states exhibit number 10 is a vial of methylprednisolone acetate that I received in the lab.
Let's go ahead and get all the exhibits in front of you.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that answer in that we have not established what was in the vial. The only thing that can be testified to at this junction is that it is a vial with a label marked methylprednisolone acetate.
Seriously? That's objection.
I think that's where we are in the process, and hopefully we'll find out more. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Have this marked as 11, please.
Number 11, Your Honor.
Very well.
Done. Approach the witness, please.
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's been marked for identification is states 11. Guys could identify that.
Tip and have a pair of scissors. This is still sealed.
This is the one with scissors. Okay.
No,
Don't run with those.
I still haven't worked out a motive though. Any ideas? No, me either.
Can you identify that, sir?
This is a vial of dried material now was labeled in the lab as item 2-1, but it states exhibit number 11 that I generated as a result of my analysis.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand any of that. What was that vial?
Gotta hate that.
I thought you didn't want him to answer that.
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet.
No.
I'm going to
His
overrule the
identification,
objection.
I couldn't understand what he was classifying that as. I'm just asking him to repeat it a little slower if possible.
So this item was the liquid contents removed by me from states exhibit number 10.
If I could have this marked as states 12, please.
Very well.
Of course I will. Maybe. Yeah, approach the witness, please.
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, what's been marked for identification is states 12. Ask you to take a look at that.
This is a bottle that's labeled as enclomiphene citrate that I received in the lab.
Put it back in the bag if you want to. Which one of these do you want? 13. If I could have State's Exhibit 13 marked here, please.
Okay.
This is number 13, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I just looked up that drug, enclomiphene citrate. It is a non-steroidal selective estrogen receptor modulator of the tryptophanolethine group. It acts by antagonizing the estrogen receptor in the pituitary gland, which reduces negative feedback by estrogen in the hypothalamic pituitary. Yeah, okay, let's go to the one that's easier to understand. Here we go. Nope, that wasn't the one. Treatment of secondary male hypogonadism. Okay, then. Hypogonadism is a growing concern in an aging male population, historically treated using exogenous testosterone. Oh, hang on. We're doing a deep dive. Yeah.
Here we go again, my friends. The novelty that never ends. You know that I cannot survive without doing a deep, deep dive.
Yep. All right. Historically treated using exogenous testosterone, concerns about possible adverse effects of testosterone have led physicians to seek alternate treatment approaches. So, it's a non-steroidal estrogen receptor for the treatment of ovarian dysfunction in women. Clomiphene citrate has also been used off-label for many years to treat secondary male hypogonadism, particularly in the setting of male infertility. Here we review the literature examining the efficacy and safety of this. Initial reports support the conclusion that it increases serum testosterone levels and follicular stimulating hormone levels without negatively impacting semen parameters. Wonder if they were trying to have a baby. So basically, hypogonadism is low serum testosterone levels associated with symptoms including decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, loss of lean muscle mass. Oh, maybe I need some of that. Loss of vitality and depression. The most sensitive symptoms supporting a diagnosis of this include erectile dysfunction and decreased libido. Okay. So apparently Mr. Cochrane had some Cochrane issues. Okay. There's your motive right there.
Stephen, hand me what's been marked for identification as stage 13 and ask you to take a look at that, please. You recognize that?
Yes, this is the liquid that I removed from State's Exhibit 12.
Okay.
When they come, generally when medications come like that in a vial, they present in a powder form, not always, but sometimes, and you have to mix them with normal saline to dilute them, or still water. Yeah, it did, yes.
I can have this 14, please.
Number 14, Your Honor.
Very well.
Once again, if I could approach the witness, please, Your Honor.
Yes.
Handy what's been marked for identification as stage 14.
Actually, I was on I thought I recognised the name. I had to take clomiphene for my first pregnancy because I had 2 miscarriages just prior, and I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, so that's what they put me on. There you go. It opened my eggs and gave me a baby.
What's a little stiffer? Oh, right there. Okay.
This mango's delicious. I love summer fruits.
And you have, I believe, with you number 15. Right, but he's also got 15. We need something.
15 needs to be marked. Is that right, Mr. Truman?
It does, Your Honor.
This is 15, Your Honor.
Very well.
Your Honor,
I've got the eggs,
hand
just
this
not
to
the
witness if
receptacle.
that's acceptable.
Yes.
Thank you. And what's been marked for identification is states 15. Recognize that?
Yes, that's the liquid contents I removed from States Exhibit 14.
And why are we doing this?
Mr. Stevens, explain to us the procedure that when you received this, what did you do with these items?
The first thing I did is administrative. It's called check-in,
Okay.
where I analyzed, where I visually inspect these and see what kind of things I received. So the first thing I noticed was the box, which is States Exhibit 9. The next thing was the first vial that I came across, States Exhibit 10. And the contents of that, which have been labeled as States Exhibit 11.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got another vial, States Exhibit 12. The contents of that vial, States Exhibit 13. And a third vial, and its liquid contents. So I had 3 vials, and then of those 3 liquids that were generated. And I just took inventory of what I had, what the bottles were labeled as, what markings they might have had on them, what lot information they had. If they had a manufacturer, what was that manufacturer? So that visual examination was first.
I think I failed to ask you to identify 14.
States Exhibit 14 is a vial that's labeled as Humalog Insulin List Pro. 10 milliliters, 100 units per milliliter.
In summary fashion, tell us what you did to perform your analysis.
So each of these items goes through a standard operating procedure or a technical procedure where we analyze them. We use scientific instruments to analyze them. We compare them to references where practical, and then we determine the results of those analyses.
Take a look at 10, please. What was your analysis of that?
So for States Exhibit 10, I determined that States Exhibit 10, the vial labeled methylprednisolone acetate, and the liquid that came out at States Exhibit 11 is the one I actually tested.
Explain that to us, please.
So States Exhibit 10 is the physical vial. States Exhibit 11 was the liquid recovered from that vial, the liquid that came out of this vial. So my analysis was on the liquid.
Okay. Now the States 11, that was lab material. You have a inventory of bottles that you use for your analysis. Is that what that is?
We have libraries and reference materials that we use, yes.
Okay, but the actual container itself, I mean, did that come with the information that came to you, or was that just some kind of testing process that you used?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, as I understood what your testimony was, you analyzed the contents of number 10 by putting it into 11.
I didn't analyze the contents of 10, the vial. I transferred those contents to States Exhibit 11.
That's okay.
And then I analyzed States Exhibit 11.
We're on the same page now, I think. Go ahead and explain what you did.
So visual examination on 10, what were the labels and markings on the bottle? Then chemical analysis on the liquid that was within this bottle.
And again, in summary fashion, what did you do to analyze States 11?
States Exhibit 11 was subjected to 3 different other kinds of testing. They're all scientific instrumentation. One of them is known as Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. The next one, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. And the final one, we call DART-TOF-MS, which stands for direct analysis in real time, time of flight, mass spectrometry. All of these are very expensive, complicated instruments. Their primary goal is to determine the chemical composition of the materials within a liquid or a solid.
What's the number of that one? What's the number of that one? Oh.
10, 11, 12.
Okay. Go ahead and talk about 12,
Yes.
please. What was number 12?
12 was a vial labeled enclomiphene citrate, 30 milliliters. And on that vial, it says for research purposes only, not for human consumption. That was the vial. This vial generated States Exhibit 13, which is the liquid that came out of that vial.
And so you actually performed your examination on States 13, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And tell us again in summary fashion, what did you do with States 13?
States Exhibit 13 was subjected to the same analytical scheme as States Exhibit 11, Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, or FTIR, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, GCMS, and DART-TOF-MS, direct analysis in real-time time-flight mass spectrometry.
Yep. Might as well
And
be talking in
This
Spanish.
one's 14? And 14, what did you do with States 14 when you received it?
So visually examined it, determined that it was labeled insulin, Lispro, and Humalog, and then separated the contents into a new vial, States Exhibit 15, the liquid, and analyzed the liquid.
And that's the analysis you conducted on States 15.
That is correct.
Was your analysis such that you could conclude what was contained in those bottles that you received?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you reach?
For the vial that was labeled methylprednisolone acetate and the liquid that was tested, States Exhibit 11, is my determination that that States Exhibit 11 was consistent with containing methylprednisolone acetate. In other words, the chemical that is on the vial, it was consistent with containing the chemical labeled on the vial.
And I forgot the number, but the next one you analyzed.
States Exhibit 12, the bottle labeled enclomiphene citrate, was my conclusion that the liquid that came out of that, States Exhibit 13, was consistent with containing glycerol and letrozole. I'll remind you that the bottle was labeled enclomiphene citrate, so it was labeled on the bottle.
The stuff, according to the label, was not the stuff you found.
That is correct.
And last, the next exhibit.
This was States Exhibit 14, the vial labeled Humalog insulin Lispro, is my conclusion that is consistent with containing human insulin or Humalog.
From the information provided, you took a number of photographs of the items that you've been reviewing with the jury today, correct?
Yes.
Could I have that smart, please?
State Exhibit number 16, Your Honor.
Okay.
Oops, excuse me. Ran out of arm. Steve, that States Exhibit 16 for identification. You took that photograph?
Yes, I did.
What are we looking at? Don't want to take you.
These are photographs that I took of the States Exhibit 9 as received in the laboratory.
And that's the box.
That is correct.
And what's that?
That is another picture of States Exhibit 9.
You also took that photograph?
I did.
And what is that depicting?
This is States Exhibit 10 as received, which at the time contained States Exhibit 11, the liquid.
The next photograph you took, what's the significance of the plastic cover?
This plastic cover is used as a tamper-evident control so that when the septum that would be expected to be underneath there, and in this case there's a septum, a rubber material that's in the center, couldn't be inadvertently punctured.
Had there been any tampering of the exhibit by the time that you received it?
When I visually inspected it and tried to remove that, the force that I was using, which I described as a moderate force, was insufficient to remove that, implying to me that it was probably intact.
And the next photograph.
These are pictures that I took of States Exhibit 12 with the liquid being inside States Exhibit 13.
And the next one.
These are pictures I took of States Exhibit 14 with the liquid being inside States Exhibit 15.
The last photograph.
These are close-ups of States Exhibit 14, the vial.
At the conclusion of your study of all of these exhibits, did you write a report of your findings?
I did.
If I could have this last exhibit marked, please.
State's exhibit number 17, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Let me give you that one. I'll show you that one. Thank you. And what's been marked for identification as state 17. You recognize that?
I do. This is the report I issued dated July 20th, 2021.
And could you share with us your conclusions that you embodied in that report, please?
So the conclusions that are embodied in this report are that States Exhibit 11, the liquid from the methylprednisolone labeled bottle, were consistent with containing methylprednisolone acetate, which is the chemical that is labeled on the bottle, States Exhibit 10. States Exhibit 12, the liquid that came out of there, States Exhibit 13, is consistent with containing letrozole and glycerol. Those are not the chemicals labeled on the bottle. The bottle is labeled as enclomiphene citrate. And States Exhibit 14, the bottle labeled Humalog Insulin Lispro, and the contents, States Exhibit 15. States Exhibit 15, the liquid is consistent with containing human insulin / Humalog.
Stevens, what was your report that you have in front of you and you've just reviewed with us, was that the only report you wrote in this case?
It was.
Has anything been brought to your attention since you conducted your study and wrote your report that would cause you to change your mind?
No.
Your Honor, at this point, state moves 9 through 17 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Selden?
No, Your Honor.
All right, States Exhibits 9 through 17 are admitted into evidence.
Check out the size of these buggers.
Stevens, focusing on the insulin,
They're huge.
is there a way to determine the difference between insulin and insulin? I'm not sure how. Lispro, is that how it's pronounced?
There is human insulin, which is generated in the human body. And then there's human insulin, there's human insulin, and there's insulin Lispro. Lispro is what we call an isomer, the same chemical formula manufactured in a lab with a subtle difference, a change in order of the blocks that build it. So there is differences in the chemical structure, but our techniques will not tell them apart. So that's why the report says it's consistent with
I've got one too, but
human
it's just
insulin /
1 year
Humalog.
in.
Humalog is the brand name for for insulin Lispro.
What's the intention or what's the use of insulin that you found in your lab?
Insulin is used to regulate blood sugar.
Can I have just a moment, please?
Yes, you may.
Are we keeping you up? Are we inconveniencing you, Natalie?
You didn't make any opinion or suggest any conclusion as to the contents in terms of volume of any of those bottles, did you?
I did not.
Why not?
Our technical procedures don't have that as part of our routine analysis, and reporting measurements of significance, such as the volume of a vial, is not something our lab does.
That's all the questions the state has, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Let's take our mid-morning break at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll break for about 10 minutes. Enjoy the delicious donuts that we have placed in your jury room. Do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. You may go with the bailiff to your jury room now.
Have you ever had, I found on my tree this year, a pear slug or cherry slug. Oh, horrible things. I looked at it, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with those leaves? Oh. And then, found out what it was. So it didn't look very well for a while. Well, yeah, aphids here too, but yeah, this apparently I'd never seen it before. It wasn't really it's called a slug, but it's this tiny little black tiny caterpillar thing that puts a slime over itself, and it eats the leaves until it's like a skeleton. I'll see if I can find a picture of them, but they're horrible.
Counsel for the defense for Natalie Cochran. Good morning. I would like to ask you, you have testified in other trials before, have you not?
I have.
And in all of those trials, you testified for the prosecution or the state, isn't that correct?
I believe that is correct, yes.
And in this case, you were asked by the prosecution and the state to testify more or less on their behalf as to the substances submitted for your analysis. Isn't that correct?
I was asked to testify to the report I had previously issued. So yes, that happened.
All right. Look at that. That one's probably the most what mine look like, these ones. So it pretty much eats the leaf until it becomes just the bare bones. And then it becomes a fly. And basically you just spray it with, ooh, gross. 50-50 mix of dishwashing liquid and vegetable oil, and that gets rid of them. And I just took off the leaves that were affected and kept going. There you go.
Be for the state in this case.
Right.
Never seen them before, but then I've never had a cherry tree either.
I'd like to ask you a few
Before,
questions
yeah.
about your education and training, not so much to qualify you as an expert, which has already been done, but just general knowledge. Okay? Yeah. In the course of your education, did you have any courses in toxicology?
Yes, I did. I had one course in graduate school.
And toxicology is the study of toxins or poisons in the body. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes.
Did you have courses in biochemistry and organic chemistry?
Yes, in undergrad, I had courses in both.
And would you tell briefly what biochemistry is?
Biochemistry, as I learned it in undergrad, is the interaction of human biology with chemistry. So materials that go into and out of your body.
Right. So you have some knowledge of how chemicals introduced in the body react in the body. Would that be a fair statement?
No, that's actually outside the scope of my expertise at the FBI.
But you have some knowledge through research, especially in the case of Humalog, correct?
As part of the training, yes, I have some foundational understanding of what insulin is, but not how it interacts with the body.
Okay.
Oh yeah, fair enough. We don't get that cold here.
Were you aware or were you informed that the substances provided to you for analysis, especially the Humalog and the methylprednisolone, were recovered from the home of Natalie Cochran, which was 433 4H Lake Road?
Yes, that probably would have been on the incoming description of evidence provided.
Okay.
Spit it out, sunshine.
Were you aware or were you told that those items were recovered pursuant to a search of 433 4H
Oh,
Lake Road
Really? No.
by police officers
No.
and other investigating officers?
They wouldn't do that.
I don't recall. No, I don't recall being told that. I mean, obviously they were
Yeah.
obtained, and I was provided information from where they were obtained, but not how they were obtained.
But they were obtained by the state and then subsequently provided to you, correct?
I assume so. Yes.
Where are you going with this?
I submit to you that Michael Cochran died around February 11th of 2019. These substances were not provided to you until June of 2021. Isn't that correct?
They were recovered in the field office sooner than that, but they arrived in my unit in, I believe it was May of 2021.
Okay.
And I started the analysis in June of 2021.
So over 2 years subsequent to the death of Michael Cochran. Wouldn't that be a fair statement?
When
If he
did you-
passed away in February of 2019.
Correct.
I have no idea.
I submit to you that these substances were collected approximately 4 months to 5 months after the death of Michael Cochran in February of 2019.
My lord.
Do you know what was done with these, where they were, how they were stored prior to you receiving them approximately 2 years later?
No, I do not.
And this is at 1.25 speed. So you're suggesting they were tampered with?
Now, I would like to discuss states 10 and 11. And 10 was a vial marked methylprednisolone acetate. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And your report states, and it's also confirmed that that particular item was found in a cabinet in the corner of the home of the
Right.
Cochrans.
He's already indicated he doesn't know any of this stuff.
I think that's correct. The
Yeah.
court will sustain the objection.
That this was recovered at 433 4H Lake Road.
Sustained,
Uh,
please, Mr.
Thank
Selden.
Okay. Methylprednisolone acetate is a synthetic corticosteroid,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, that is correct.
A form of steroids in general, right?
The use that I researched and came across was an anti-inflammatory,
Right.
not a corticosteroid, an anabolic steroid for growing muscle tissue.
And that leads me to my next question, which is methylprednisolone acetate suppresses inflammation,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
Now, I submit to you that if Natalie Cochran had inflammation of the lungs, would it be a proper use of methylprednisolone acetate to aid in suppressing that inflammation of the lungs?
That is a question that would be answered by a doctor.
Mhm.
It's outside of my area of expertise.
Well, methylprednisolone acetate suppresses inflammation, right?
Objection.
Mhm.
Witness has indicated it's beyond his area of expertise. It's beyond his area of expertise.
I think that says it all.
Uh-huh.
The court is constrained to sustain the objection.
I think we have our next nomination.
Can steroids increase blood sugar?
Again, that's not an area I'm an expert in. The interaction of steroids with the human body would be an endocrinologist or
Mhm.
potentially a toxicologist or an MD, a doctor.
Okay.
This is a huge waste of time. Wrong witness, wrong questions.
Do you know if
And
an
dipshit
overdose of
asking 'em.
methylprednisolone acetate is life-threatening or not?
I do not know.
Okay.
It's almost like you can't even
I'd like
stand
to move
up.
on to states 12 and 13.
Did you have a bit of a tipple this morning,
That
did you? Love?
was identified as a vial marked enclophamine citrate. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you just see that? You headbutted the microphone.
The court is constrained to sustain the
I'm going to go
objection.
back and watch that. Hang on. I'm going to watch it in slow-mo. Looks like he's drunk. Come on. Today, Junior. Screen grab it. Hang on. What the actual? Go.
Can steroids increase blood sugar?
Again, that's not an area I'm an expert in. The interaction of steroids with the human body would be an endocrinologist or potentially a toxicologist or an MD, a doctor.
Okay.
We're going to be far back. Sorry. I got to catch it though. Come on.
Do you know if an overdose of methylprednisolone acetate is life-threatening or not?
I do not know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And headbutt coming right. Look a bit woozy.
I'd like to move on to states 12
That's
and
my client listened to me.
13. That was was identified as a vial marked
Ready?
in clofamine citrate. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's gold. Absolute gold. Ah,
And that
and
particular
then he just
substance,
pretends
according
like it didn't happen. Look. I wonder if there is something wrong with him. Like, that's. Okay.
to your report, came from
Yeah.
211 Old Grandview Road, which was not the Cochrane residence. Isn't it correct as to where it was recovered from?
Your Honor, may I refer to the report? It's Exhibit
Certainly.
17. So that is not listed in the, excuse me, yes, it is. States Exhibit 12 was recovered in 211 Old Grandview.
Thank you. Which, of course, is not the same as 433 4H Lake Road, right?
Correct.
Now, your extensive analysis showed that it didn't contain enclofamine citrate. It contained glycerol and letrozole, correct?
Correct.
So it was mismarked, misidentified, right?
The label on States Exhibit 12 did not match the contents of the label in States Exhibit 13. That's correct.
Fine. If I submit to you that
You're drunk? Yeah, I believe it.
withdraw that, I'm not going to ask that question. I'd like to move on to states 14 and 15.
Yeah, do that, sir.
That was marked as Humalog Insulin Liz Pro. Is that correct?
Yes, States Exhibit, the vial, States Exhibit 14 was marked that.
And you testified that you have specialized knowledge, research, etc., into Humalog insulin and its effects and your research. Is that correct?
I believe I testified that I have the expertise to analyze those and determine whether or not something contains that or is consistent with containing those materials, not their effects on the human body.
Insulin in general, well, there are different classifications of insulin. There's insulin produced by the pancreas of the body, which is produced internally by the body, correct?
Correct.
Then you have insulin, which is manufactured. You have Humalog, Liz Pro, and you have a couple of other brands of insulin. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You have essentially two different kinds of synthetic insulin. You have fast-acting insulin, which Humalog Liz Pro is a member of, and you have the slower, longer-acting types of insulin, correct?
Correct.
This is like pulling teeth. Listen to him.
Humalog Liz Pro insulin is termed fast-acting because its effects take approximately 15 minutes to work, correct?
And yeah.
My research said 15 to 30 minutes, but yes, it's fast acting in that it is ready, available insulin. Yes.
And its workings or effect is to essentially reduce blood sugar, right?
The marketed purpose of insulin is to regulate blood sugar. Its effects in the body on any given injection would be something best answered by an endocrinologist or a doctor.
But you said you have specialized knowledge of insulin, right?
Correct. Yes.
A lot of its effects on the body, though.
Now, insulin, from your understanding of it, doesn't just wham, it takes effect and that's it. Humalog Lispro insulin works over 3 to 4 hours. Isn't that right?
Again, that's a question best answered by an endocrinologist or doctor. My expertise is in the analysis of the chemistry of insulin, not its interactions in the human body.
How many
But there
times
were
you have
various
told,
research articles attached to the reports, which included research into insulin, its effects, etc. Weren't you familiar with those?
Yes, there are references attached to my report that talk generically. I don't believe there were actual studies. There are lists, the references to some studies, but those are not studies that I understood as interacting in the human body.
Well, why did you research them then? Why did you refer to them and why did you say you were familiar with them?
If I'm understanding correctly, there's two sources of information that came out of the references that I provided. One was drugs.com, which is a site that we use for generic uses of drugs. And the other one was the Merck Index. And the Merck Index was provided for some of these to show generically what these are used for. And those references may be included in those studies in its printouts.
And the Merck Index and those studies tell you how they work in the body, right? How their chemicals work, right?
Not
The
really.
references that are included may provide that information, but those are not studies that they're within my scope of expertise.
And everybody has different absorption rates and
Permission to mark this exhibit for identification purposes.
All right, if you'll hand it to the clerk, please.
Give me strength.
This will be defendant's exhibit number 9.
At night, I think it might be time to hang up your boots, mate. Just quietly.
Permission to approach the witness, Charlie.
Yes.
Permission to question the witness from here.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Stevens, would you look at those collection of photographs?
Sure.
How many photographs are there?
There are 4 photographs of what appear to be a vial in different positions.
I'm going to go through them one by one, if that's all right.
Oh, Lord.
The top one, would it be a fair representation to say this is a photograph of Humalog insulin Lispro vial? It's marked U100. At the bottom it says Lilly, and it has a fairly clear liquid that appears to be full to the top. Would that be correct?
This is a picture of a Humalog insulin bottle, Insulin Lispro, marked Lilly. It's hard to tell from the image. That's the collar of the vial, so it does look like there's a liquid there. But it
I don't even know what.
This material is involved.
I,
Without having
I can't work out for the life of me what they're talking about. Like, I've not seen any evidence that actually tells you that this is what happened. Like, maybe when we get to the no. Maybe when we get to the medical examiner, they might be able to say, "Oh, yes, there was a needle prick found between the toes or something." But There is absolutely nothing that they've produced. Nothing. They talk about finances, and they've talked about files, but that doesn't. I just don't get it. I don't. Oh, there's a shitload of doubt. I'd like to see the toxicology report, actually, because prednisolone can affect your blood glucose levels, and if he was doing the two at the same time, definitely. But it could well have been an accident. Who knows?
I've seen this. I don't know. I didn't take this picture.
Well,
It's
I
not a
would
bubble. Hang on, let me
submit to
go
you
back
that
a bit.
this photograph
As well, of a Humalog insulin bottle, Insulinless Pro, Mark Lilly. It's hard to tell from the image. That's the collar of the vial, so it does look like there's a liquid there, but it could be a bubble as well. This material doesn't bubble up. So without having seen this, I don't know. I didn't take this picture.
Well, I would submit to you that
I would
this
submit to you
photograph
that I'm
was
drunk.
taken by Lieutenant Bledsoe and another officer at the location of 433 4H Lake Road,
Mm-hmm.
and it was placed on a counter and photographed.
Yeah. And
Okay? Does this look like the same vial that was submitted to you for analysis?
The front of this has the same markings. I would want to check with States Exhibit 14 to make sure they have the same serials. And it's not possible to tell different lots.
yeah,
If they're the same lot of vials, it wouldn't be possible to determine if this vial and this vial were actually the same
Okay.
from pictures alone.
The second photograph is a
you didn't have
side view
trouble grabbing the paper.
of what appears to be the same vial. Isn't that correct?
It's like,
Yes, this is a picture of
oh,
another vial, or the same vial, if that's what you're telling me.
And again, as far as what it shows, is it appears to be filled to the top, or as you said, possibly a bubble, correct?
From the picture alone,
They all
I
have
can't
to have a
determine where the
bubble in
liquid
them.
is. There's a label that covers the vast majority of the bottle, and then at the very top, around where the collar of the vial is, there's a circle, and that could be liquid or it could be a bubble.
You know, and I'd like to put these on the viewer so the jury can see as well.
Go ahead.
they have to have air in them so that you the
Now, Mr.
glass, they don't
Stevens,
pressurize.
If you
Yeah,
look at this
generally-
viewer, and
When you're mixing up, if you're adding liquid to something like that to dilute it, you actually have to push some air in a little bit and then shake it up so that you can withdraw it without, because you know when you suck fluid out of a plastic container, it contracts. Well, you can't do that with glass.
I don't know if you can see it or not.
Okay.
This is the first photograph I showed you, which was identified as Humalog Insulinless Pro. Is that right?
Okay, Humalog. Looks like 1,000, 100. Not very clear. Shitty photo.
Correct.
And as you can see from this photograph, it appears as if the fluid comes all the way up to here on the bottom. Would that not be a fair and accurate representation?
Your Honor, state objects. This is way outside of this witness's expertise. The picture is what the picture is, but it has nothing to do with forensic chemistry.
Your Honor, it does in the sense that we are documenting what he received, what condition it was in.
And the amount he
and how
extracted
was
out of it.
analyzed.
I'm not sure the witness can answer, but I'll give the
Well,
defense.
he could quite easily measure what he took out of it compared to what the vial volume says. It's an easy thing to answer.
some
surely.
latitude. If you can answer, Mr. Stevens, go ahead.
So as I previously testified to, it does look like there is some material up there at the top, much like you see now with States Exhibit 15, there are bubbles. And so from this picture alone, I can't ascertain whether that's liquid or a bubble or just the collar of the vial. So I can't answer the question accurately from this picture alone.
I thought he took the fluid out.
This second
All of them.
photograph is, or appears to be, the same vial from a side view. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it looks like it's up to the collar, up to there. That line there.
Yes, this has the same markings as State's Exhibit 14.
Right, it has some numbers on the side, which are identical to the state.
Ah, I see what he's doing. He's saying that nothing was used. That bottle's full. But it could have been replaced with water or depends on what his report says, I suppose, doesn't it?
Correct.
It was the right consistency percentages.
Would you look at this photograph? Does this appear to be the same vial with the same contents viewed from the other side? And I call attention to these markings on the side, WG4171A and X. Is that the same vial as the States?
This picture has the same markings as the vial from the State. I don't know if it's the same vial. Same markings.
Appears to be the same.
It has the same markings.
I'd like to know if they actually did, if they would have tested for the human log, but did they actually do like a concentration, what the concentration was?
I submit to you that,
Oh, I submit to you.
as I said, this vial was recovered and photographed by Lieutenant Bledsoe, who also stated in his report when he submitted these vials for analysis that this particular vial appeared to be full and unopened. Can you comment on that?
This is the first time I've heard that information. So I have no opinion.
Where is the
It doesn't
lieutenant?
change
You
my
need to ask him that.
conclusion that item 15 is consistent with containing insulin, human insulin / list pro.
Yep.
And just for clarification, this last photograph, which was in this batch, again, was photographed by Lieutenant Bledsoe as he found it allegedly in Natalie Cochran's refrigerator at 433 H Lake Road. Does that information give you any other information or impact your analysis?
No, that's not.
Okay, thank you.
Surely she wouldn't be silly enough to use that and then put it back in the fridge.
Move for admission.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
None.
Very well. What exhibits again are presented, Madam Clerk?
These 4 photos, number 9.
Collectively marked as number 9, they will be admitted.
Now, I know you're not an endocrinologist,
Mm.
but in order for synthetic insulin to be used, it has to either be injected directly with a hypodermic needle, or it has to be put into a pump worn by an individual for its use in the body. Isn't that correct?
Still,
I'm not familiar with the methods of
Administration.
application, if you will, the routes of entry that the drug would, but those sound like things that I've heard in general media. In other words, I don't know how the drug is best administered into the body.
subcutaneously.
In the reports provided, Humalog Lispro, once the top is punctured, has to be used within 28 days or its potency disappears. As a chemist, isn't that correct?
No, that can't be correct. In our case, we use standards for a period of time. So when we puncture them and we use them, we can still use them up until they no longer meet our quality criteria. From a medical perspective, that may be the case. But from an analytical chemistry, can we detect this? The answer is we can detect after something has been punctured more than 28 days.
You can't determine the potency of the drug as far as a time period. You didn't do any tests for the potency of the drug.
Correct. We did not test for concentration or potency as part of our routine analysis.
So it could have been
we
refilled
did
with
not test
water.
the potency of the drug.
But there were reports attached to your report and other reports from the FBI that once the top of Humalog insulin vial is punctured, the contents degrade over a period of time as far as usefulness in the body. Isn't that correct?
When I tested the sample that was submitted, States Exhibit 15, I compared it to fresh insulin obtained from a pharmacy, and they compared favorably. In other words, the ratios that we look at and the retention times that we look at were all consistent, and hence the conclusion. States Exhibit 15 is consistent with containing human insulin / Humalog at the time I analyzed it.
Okay. Now that brings up another point. To analyze the contents of this vial, marked Humalog, give me just a moment. You or someone in your lab went out and got a new bottle of Humalog from Dan's Wellness Pharmacy for comparison, correct?
Correct.
And you did various tests on that bottle and compared it to the bottle that was submitted to you, all kinds of tests, and you found it was consistent with Humalog Lispro insulin, correct?
The report wording is consistent with consistent with human insulin / Humalog. Yes.
Consistent with means it is identical, but it is of the same
Oh,
family. It appears
Tomato,
to be the
tomato.
same type of drug.
Consistent with is the predefined highest level of association that we have in that standard operating procedure. So there is no identification of insulin in our lab. It's not a possibility.
Now, synthetic insulin is produced by the companies in batches. What I mean is the sum total of all synthetic insulin isn't produced by the manufacturer at the same time. It's done in batches of insulin. Isn't that correct?
Yes, insulin would be manufactured in lots or batches, yes.
Now, it has been put forth or alleged that a vial of Humalog Lispro insulin was provided to Natalie Cochran on or about February 6th of 2019. There is no possible way to say that particular vial is the particular vial that was analyzed by you. Isn't that correct?
I want to make sure I understand your question. You're asking, is the item submitted to me the vial that was collected, or are you asking if I can tie the vial that I tested to the one you described?
I'll ask it a little clearer.
yeah.
And I want to make sure I don't misstate anything. There have been some
This is just
suggestions, implications that a vial of Humalog Lispro insulin might have been used by Natalie Cochran to inject her husband, and that vial may have been provided by the Davises, who had a son with diabetes. You don't have any way of determining if that was true, that vial was the vial you were provided in 21, which was recovered 4 or 5 months after the death of Michael Cochrane.
Lord.
My analysis would not link insulin to any incident. It only tests the contents of the vial. In other words, I don't know that any alleged activities happened out of this vial.
Okay. Why didn't you measure the volume of the vial?
That's a fair question.
At the time it was submitted, it was not in question, and that's not part of our technical
Really?
operating procedure. That's not a
Really?
requirement. That's not something that we were asked to do at the time, and it's
Well,
not something that we
hang on.
actually have a procedure to do.
If you're going to forensically examine that, you would want to know how much was in there, what the volume was. Then you could actually establish how much was used and what concentration. Really? Are you shitting me? Otherwise, it's pointless. What do you... I have no idea. I have no idea. I am just like, this is a huge waste of time. They brought in a forensic chemist to analyze the contents and they didn't fucking measure it. Okay. It's like coming to mow my lawns with a rake. What's the point?
Why not? Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
the first thing you would want to know
Yeah.
to determine
Absolutely.
if any of
The
the
first
fluid was
question.
taken out?
I agree
Right.
with.
This is beyond the witness's scope. He says this is our procedure. He followed the procedure. The defense hypothetical as to why it is irrelevant.
I think we're getting far afield. The court
Really?
is going to sustain the objection.
You don't know if any fluid was taken out of this vial or not.
That is correct.
Why didn't you ask that in the first place?
Now it's been set forth that there was a puncture in the top of this vial. Is that correct?
That's outside my scope of expertise. There's a different examiner that examined that.
But you examined the bottle when it came in, did you not?
I did visually examine the bottle, but it's outside my area of expertise to determine if any markings on there are a result of a tool, like a needle or a syringe.
I didn't ask you about markings. I actually asked you about it has like a rubber
Yeah.
top.
Which leaves a
In
mark
order to use it,
when you
someone
puncture.
has to use a needle to put it in to withdraw the substance.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's the primary way that a user at home would use insulin.
And if there was a puncture in the top of that rubber seal, did you observe that when you looked at the bottle? I'm not talking about markings. I'm talking about a puncture in the top.
I captured images, States Exhibit 16, that include an image of the top of that, but I do not have an opinion on whether or not that's a puncture.
There were no fingerprints on the bottle. Is that correct?
It's outside my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who examines the bottle when it comes in to determine if there are fingerprints or not?
In this case, I believe it went to our latent prints operating unit, which they would be the ones that would issue reports on that.
Okay. Did you review any of those reports or look at any of them?
I do not.
Why would he? Isn't it just a shit show?
Now, I know it's not your area of expertise,
But I'm going to
but
ask you anyway.
if the top was punctured, there would be no way to determine when that occurred.
Objection.
Sustained.
Oh.
Okay.
Mhm.
moment, Your Honor. I'd like to look over my notes.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Because you're a dipshit. I think we've won our award.
If the contents of the vial submitted to you and were tested and they were the same or consistent with a brand new bottle of Humalog insulin, which you did, you compared it. How could if the bottle were punctured 2 years earlier, how would the contents compare? Would not the contents of the vial you were given be different as far as degrading?
We didn't conduct concentration studies. We didn't conduct potency studies. Those are, again, outside the scope of our technical expertise.
That's another thing.
Or
Why forensically? Why get a chemist in it at all if you're not going to even address the potency, like the concentration? I don't get it. Why have it analyzed if you're not going to measure the quantity and the concentration? Isn't that the whole point? Ah.
Sorry.
And he's sitting there going, I gave him one fucking job and he's fucking it up. One job.
Last time, Your Honor.
All right.
I believe that concludes my cross-examination, Your Honor.
Oh,
Very well.
thanks.
Redirect Mr. Truman.
State has no additional questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any reason to hold this gentleman further?
None.
Anything further from Mr. Stevens? Mr. Selden?
I don't believe so. I believe you can be excused.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. You may step down. You are
Selden,
excused.
you have just won the Egyptian Award.
Come up, please.
All right, that's the end of day.
This case, and I don't want you to be influenced one way or another by someone else's opinion. It is your decision that will
hang on.
count.
Maybe, hang on. We might not.
All right, members of the jury, you may be delighted or you may be sad, but we've gone as far as we can go today. Today is Friday, so you'll have a very nice weekend. If you come to court on Tuesday, you'll be surprised because Tuesday is a holiday. It's Martin Luther King Day, and we will be closed. So we have a 3-day weekend. I don't like holidays during a trial because it gives my juries an extra day to get into trouble. And I don't want you all to get into trouble. We've already got too much time and effort invested in this matter to have difficulties.
All right. Happy to go to day 4, which is actually 2 days. So we're up to date because of the bank holiday. That was just, I don't even get this trial. Like, I've got no idea why she's even here. Like, okay. Actually, let me just put a mark on there so I know where we are at. And like that. Right. Okay.
Your Honor, the only issue with this, that we have is a technical one. And when we try to full size the screen, the picture just kind of falls apart. So we were
Yeah.
going to try and substitute a cable to see if that was a problem.
You mean this?
So, Mr. Cochrane, of the Cochranes, of the Cochranes, well, Mr. Cochrane for the Cochranes, Mr. Cochrane,
Mr. Cochran's.
Natalie Cochran, Miss Cochran, Mr. Cochrane.
That says Michael Cochran.
Uh-huh.
It says Michael
Like,
Cochran.
It says Michael Cochran.
Michael Cochran.
Cochrane. Tactical. Cochrane's.
Michael Cochran.
Cochrane Tacticals.
However, Mr. Cochran.
And they said they can't do anything. You're a cunt. That's plain and simple. Just like that. Simple. Cunt. You can't say that. Did you guys see the screenshot I took the other day during a trial? And the closed captions got it so bad. They were talking about they were talking about the daughter driving her father's car that had a manual gear. And yeah, this is what it came up with. It's supposed to be stick. But alas, no. Yep. That happened.
But at the moment, that's the only problem. So
Okay, so
We'll
we're
have to have-
dealing with a picture that's that small.
yeah, I'm afraid that we could blow it up, but if I can figure this out. And it will be on that screen, which is bigger, but unfortunately, that's not
The
real.
jurors
convenient
won't
for-
be able to
for the
see that
jury.
screen, however.
How do you make this bigger, Ashley?
I don't know if you can make that bigger
Until we're admitted. Okay. And once it comes up, we can try again. And if worst case scenario, we'll test the jury's vision.
Okay, their eyesight.
Yes,
All right, well, we can just do the best we can.
that's all we can do.
And then do we have at my house this morning? It felt like one. Good morning.
Uh-oh.
Now, Mr. Selden, would you call your witness to make sure that she can hear?
You wish me to step out?
Either way,
Might be better. I will
Okay.
return in a moment.
if you'll bear with us for a minute, Dr. Krieger.
Certainly. Oh, so is this? No, it's still state witness.
Members of the jury, we
DIANE.
have had some difficulty blowing up the video screen. It's kind of small, but I think you can still see the witness, and we may just have to go along with what we have.
Speaker mic.
She was unable to contact the link.
Your Honor, she did hook up with Teams initially. She had audio and then it disappeared. So she can see what's going on, but she can't hear, which is the most important thing.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Krieger.
I can unmute myself. I muted myself. That's the section of the attorney. If you prefer me to stay unmuted, that's fine, and I can hang up from the telephone, whatever you prefer.
I think we need the telephone because we have problems with the audio.
She's calling now, Your Honor.
Okay, so, yeah.
She had, our expert can hear, she can hear when she is unmuted.
Okay. So if you'll stay unmuted, Dr. Krieger, we'll be good as gold.
Maybe.
Is this working for you?
It's working great.
Great.
All right. If you'd please stand, Dr. Krieger, and raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may be seated. All right, Mr. Truman.
Thank you, Your
Would you state and spell your name, please?
Diane Krieger, DIANE KRIEGER.
Doctor, are you currently employed?
I am.
And what is your occupation?
I am a physician and endocrinologist with Endocrinology Associates in Miami, Florida, and I am an associate professor of medicine and head of endocrinology at the Florida International University College of Medicine.
Your Honor, I hate to interrupt, but our expert cannot hear her at all now. I don't know what's going on.
All right.
Okay. Let me do something.
Stand by.
Can you hear me through the telephone?
Can you hear her? The telephone.
Can you hear me through the telephone?
We're checking.
Can you hear her?
Okay. Because I originally was muted, then I unmuted to see if that would help you. And now I need to figure out how to mute again.
Okay, try.
Okay. Now our expert can hear her now.
Okay. We should be good now. But we can't hear Dr. Krieger.
Aren't we all glad we live in this modern world?
We can't hear you at all, Dr. Krieger.
Judge, the way we did it last week was we muted the team's microphones and broadcast through the telephone.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do now. Dr. Krieger is on her phone.
And she's yapping away.
She's making hand signals. Can you hear me, Dr. Krieger? Okay, that's a start.
I agree.
There's a dial tone.
Dr. Krieger, you can answer that. It is us calling you back.
I put it on Do Not Disturb. Don't call me.
Okay. She should answer.
Yes.
Answer that if you can. I'll just send us a note. What does that say, Mr. Truman?
She's trying to reconnect with the number that called her.
We'll call her.
Oh.
Okay, we're calling you, Dr. Krieger.
Hello.
Ah, that's promising.
Yes. Sorry about that.
No problem, not your fault. Now, Mr. Selden, can you check to see if
Yes,
your
Your Honor.
expert can hear?
I can hear.
Okay.
Oh, crap.
Now my call is being forwarded to voicemail.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, why don't we start, and hopefully your expert will let us know. She'll call if she can't hear.
Let me send her a text message real quick.
All right.
I can hear.
Oh, okay, we have another expert on the line. That's what's causing us our problems, Dr. Krieger. The defense expert wants to be able to hear your testimony.
She just called me. She can't hear.
Why don't we just connect? That phone is a conference call phone. Just call the defense expert on that and add her to that call.
Okay. If someone knows how to do that, we can.
Well,
do it.
maybe. Don't put me under that kind of pressure.
They're going to try another.
There's an ad.
Why don't you stay on the phone for a moment? Your Honor, I'm having her just stand by on my phone until.
Okay.
It out.
Stanley, come up with your number.
Press 1 if you'd like to speak to the defense expert. Press 2 if you'd like to speak to a dipshit.
Hello, Dr. Banerjee. Hello, Dr. Banerjee.
Dr. Banerjee, just mute your phone, and we should be going forward now. You can hear okay?
Thank you.
Correct?
Yes, I can. I'm muting.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Krieger, are you still with us?
I am.
Outstanding. How many lawyers does it take to get a phone call?
I can tell you I've been doing telehealth for 5 years, and this happens in my life every day.
Well, doctor, through our Supreme Court, we have 1995 technology, so welcome to West Virginia. Doctor, before you stopped, you were mentioning endocrinology. Could you explain to us what that is, please?
You think?
Yes, endocrinology is a subspecialty of internal medicine that deals with the function of all the glands in the body, such as the pancreas, which makes insulin, and the thyroid, which makes thyroid hormone, the pituitary, that makes a lot of hormones that direct the other hormones, the ovaries and the testes. So we specialize in problems that happen in glands.
Now, doctor, to get to this point, what kind of training did you have, please?
I have an undergraduate degree from Cornell University. From there, I went to the University of California, San Francisco, where I received a medical degree. From there, I crossed the country to Boston, where I went to the Beth Israel Hospital, a major teaching institution of Harvard Medical School. I did my internal medicine residency there, and then stayed on for a fellowship.
Doctor, could you tell us in summary fashion your work experience, please?
Yes. My first job was at the University of Miami Diabetes Research Institute, where I was an assistant clinical professor of medicine, taking care of patients, teaching medical students, and doing research. In 1991, I opened a private practice in Miami and have since then been practicing endocrinology in what started as a group with just me and now has 5 endocrinologists. And I then joined the faculty at a new medical school about 12 years ago, the Florida International University College of Medicine, where I am now head of endocrinology and associate professor of medicine. I teach second-year medical students the pathophysiology of endocrinology, and I teach the clinical studies of third-year medical school students and first-year residents.
Now, doctor, have you published any peer-reviewed articles?
Yes. During the time of my private practice, I was also involved in a lot of clinical research and have published a number of articles about those topics, a variety of topics. I did research in diabetes, in natural products and their safety and effectiveness. And later in my career, I did a lot of vaccine research and had a number of publications having to do with that.
Have you been a presenter for any national or international conferences?
Yes, in 2021, I came to Morgantown, West Virginia, where I presented at a symposium. I was the endocrine expert for the Clarksburg Johnson VA insulin murder cases, and the prosecutors and I and several of the other physicians created a symposium jointly with a medical school and a law school about the cases.
Doctor, the term board certified comes up when experts are involved. What does that mean?
That means that you have the physician has achieved a certain level of training and then has demonstrated competency by taking examinations. So I'm board certified in internal medicine and in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism.
You are licensed to practice medicine, I take it, in various jurisdictions?
Yes, I'm licensed to practice medicine in the state of Florida and in the state of Utah.
You alluded to it earlier, but what high-profile cases have you been involved in?
Yes, I've been involved in 2 serial murder cases involving insulin. The first was at the Johnson VA in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and the second was in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was an expert for the Office of the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, subject to inquiry by the defense, the state would move this witness be treated as an expert.
All right, Mr. Selden, do you wish to engage in voir dire of the proposed expert witness?
No, Your Honor, we accept her as an expert.
Very well. Dr. Krieger will be accepted by the court as an expert in her field.
Doctor, at the state's request, you reviewed some medical records and you drafted a report of your opinions and findings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You wrote one report dated April 13th, 2023, and it's 7 pages long. Is that right?
That's correct.
Since drafting that report, have you had anything brought to your attention that would cause you to make changes or amendments to your report?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, state moves State 18 into evidence.
All right. Have you seen that, Mr. Selden?
I have, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
State's number 18 will be admitted into evidence.
Doctor, in preparation for your report, what records did you review?
I have a list of those records. Would you like me to read them?
I think that might be helpful, please.
I have records from the Charleston Area Medical Center, from Orthopedic and Spine Surgery Associates, the records of Dr. R. Patel, the records of the Raleigh General Hospital, West Virginia Controlled Substance Drug Log, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Lieutenant T.C. Bledsoe, interview of Stephanie Hamilton, STD TOOLMARK worksheet, and an autopsy report.
And that the autopsy report was from the State Medical Examiner's Office in West Virginia, is that correct?
That is correct.
Doctor, what's the cause of death of Michael Cochrane, according to your review of the records?
Well, I'm not a cause of death expert since I'm an endocrinologist. My expertise is in hypoglycemia, but it appears that his death was related to hypoglycemia, which then produced cerebral edema.
And that's what I'd ask you, if you feel competent to do so. Can you explain what cerebral edema is?
Fluid in the brain.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear you well.
Sure. Can you explain to us what cerebral edema is?
Certainly. Cerebral edema is swelling of the brain cells, and that is usually caused by either not enough blood sugar going to the brain cells or not enough oxygen going to the brain cells.
In your report, you indicate a number of, well, for lack of a better word, pieces of information or tests that could have been performed at one point or another that would have helped you be more definitive in your assessment of the case. Could you explain to me what you meant by that?
Yes. When a person presents with a very low blood sugar, which we call hypoglycemia, there are very specific tests that should be done prior to the treatment of the low blood sugar. There are a list of tests. I can tell you each one specifically if you'd like.
Please.
But unfortunately, you would like me to. Okay. We do an insulin level, a C-peptide level, a pro-insulin level, a beta-hydroxybutyrate, a glutinized sulfonylurea screen.
Jesus.
And those tests help us determine whether the low blood sugar was related to insulin or not, and where the insulin could have come from. The test needs to be done prior to the treatment of the low blood sugar.
In this case,
unfortunately, in this case, the tests were not performed. I can tell you that I've reviewed many cases, as I told you, of my prior experience, and it is close to zero in any of those cases that the tests were performed. And it's unfortunate because it really helps make a determination about the cause of the low blood sugar.
Okay, so there was a limit, as the state understands your testimony, doctor, there was a limited time during which those tests that you mentioned could have been performed that would have helped definitively determine the insulin issue.
That's right. Tests should have been performed on arrival at the emergency room when the other blood tests were performed, or as soon as it became evident that the blood sugar was extremely low.
And what's the impact of treatment? Had the treatment taken place and then those tests performed, what would have been the relationship between those two factors?
What happens is the treatment of low blood sugar is glucose or sugar. And when sugar is administered, it changes the results of some of the blood tests that we draw and makes them unhelpful.
Okay, so those tests were not performed. So what alternative means is there to determine the outcome or the impact of insulin or lack thereof?
In my prior experience with the other cases, and again in this case, the only thing left to do is to go through all the possible causes of low blood sugar and determine if they are credible or possible in this case.
And how many of them would there be?
There are many. I listed, I believe, 13. I left some possible causes out because they don't apply in adults or because it was very clear from the history of this particular person that the causes would not apply. And I listed 13 causes.
Let's talk about those 13 causes, doctor. Let's go through them, please, and your process of discussing them and ruling them in or out as a potential cause.
Of course. Okay. So the first one I listed in just in no particular order, but I'll just go through the way I listed them 2 years ago. That many patients who have diabetes are treated with medications that cause low blood sugar, and that's what we see most often. But the person we're talking about now did not have diabetes and was not taking any of those meds. End-stage liver failure, we call it hepatic failure, can cause low blood sugar because the liver is a good source of sugar for the body when someone isn't eating. And our patient here did not have any liver problems that would be considered end-stage liver problems. He had a minor abnormality of a couple of tests over many years that were not affecting him. End-stage kidney failure can cause a low blood sugar because the kidney makes blood sugar, oddly enough, and helps the low blood sugar when people need it. And his kidney function was excellent. A very severe systemic infection, that means an infection that spreads from where it started into the bloodstream, can cause a low blood sugar. And we have no evidence of that. He didn't have a fever. So at the time that someone checked his his temperature at home, and he didn't have low blood pressure, which is associated with widely disseminated severe infection. He did receive an antibiotic prior to the test we do to check for systemic infection, but he received only one dose, and that dose would not likely have been enough to make that blood test negative, and it was negative when it was done at the next hospital. Very, very, very severe malnutrition can cause, rarely, but can cause a low blood sugar. But this gentleman was not malnourished. He had a normal body weight. In fact, he was interested in bodybuilding and was muscular. So that would not apply. Excess alcohol can cause it in a certain particular circumstance. It can cause it when someone drinks a lot of alcohol and then doesn't eat. That has to do with how alcohol works in the liver, that it suppresses one way of making sugar, but not the other. So if someone drinks a lot and doesn't eat for a few days, we can see low blood sugar. And we don't have evidence of that. We don't have a history of alcohol use. His alcohol level was undetectable, and that's not an issue. An insufficiency of the adrenal gland can cause low blood sugar, rarely in adults, mainly in children, but it can. And we don't have any evidence that this person had a problem with his adrenal. It was working very well. He was on a nasal steroid, which sometimes it's used in very high amounts, could possibly suppress his adrenal gland, but that wouldn't be operative in him. And those steroids are not strong enough to cause adrenal insufficiency. Sometimes medications unrelated to diabetes can cause low blood sugar, but there are very, very few that are really believable. I made a list of the medicines he said he was taking. One of those on the list, I subsequently learned, was not what he was taking. He thought he was taking something called N-clomiphene, which people may have heard of as a fertility drug. Sometimes it's used in males to help increase testosterone. He thought he was taking that, but he was actually taking letrozole, which is a medicine that is used in breast cancer patients to stop male hormones from converting to female hormones, and downstream that tells the body to make more testosterone. So that doesn't have an effect on blood sugar. He was maybe taking a seizure medicine. It's not clear. He was taking it. That's not associated with blood sugar problems. He was taking pseudoephedrine. If anything, pseudoephedrine would raise the blood sugar, but it doesn't cause low blood sugar. He was taking an asthma medication and some inhaled antihistamine, and again, those do not cause low blood sugar. A malignancy is another cause of malignancy, that means cancer, is another cause of low blood sugar when it's widely spread and very end stage, and it's not very common, and we have no evidence of that in this healthy young man. There is a tumor of the pancreas. It's called an insulinoma. Oma means tumor, making insulin. And those are rare. I've seen a number of them. They tend to present over time. Someone has complaints over months to years when the blood sugar is found to be low, and they're relatively easy to treat. They don't they're not what we call refractory, meaning hard to treat, where you have to get a lot of sugar to bring the sugar up. So it would be very, very unlikely that he would have had an insulinoma. The next, item number 11, is a very, very rare situation where there's no insulinoma, but the body acts like there is one. And we see this most often in people who have had gastric bypass surgery. And he did not. So that would be highly unlikely. Finally, or not finally, near finally, is what we call the factitious use of medications that cause low blood sugar, where someone takes them, call for attention, call for help. We don't know why that happens. And they're pills. Those pills rarely, some of them are very weak and don't cause low blood sugar. Some of them are stronger and can cause low blood sugar, but they don't cause a low potassium, which we'll talk about later. And our patient here had a low potassium. Finally, antibodies to insulin can cause a low blood sugar. It's been rarely reported in Caucasians. It's mainly reported in Asian countries and in patients with autoimmune problems. And our patient here did not have autoimmune problems. There was a small amount, or we don't know how much, the urine screen for benzodiazepine, which is a tranquilizer, was found in his urine. Usually when that's found, we need to have a blood test to follow up on how much and what it could be, but that wasn't done. There have been some reports of low blood sugar with that medicine. I looked at them carefully. There was a paper from Iran that said that people who came in with overdose of benzodiazepine had lower sugar than those who had other reasons for symptoms. And interestingly, in that paper, they didn't tell us what the blood sugar was. It didn't say how low the blood sugar was. Another paper by those same authors reporting something similar showed blood sugars in the 80s. And we generally define low blood sugar as less than 55. So I'm not sure if that information is quite believable, and it's not in the mainstream of the list of medicines that cause low blood sugar. Some antibiotics we know can cause low blood sugar. He did not receive any of those that we're aware of.
Doctor, you indicated you had the records from Raleigh General Hospital from his admission on February 6th of 2019. Did you see in there the blood glucose level that Raleigh General's testing detected?
Yes.
What was it?
21.
21. What's the clinical significance of a 21 blood glucose level?
I would call that a profoundly low blood sugar. Very, very low, which we rarely see. And it's at the magnitude that we were seeing in the cases that I reviewed in the other two series that I told you about, where it's extremely low. I would say that, for me, it's a big call to attention. What is this about? Why is this sugar so low?
But as you've already indicated, even though that calls your attention to it, it did not at Raleigh General Hospital, and none of the testing that you suggested was performed.
That's correct.
What is the impact on blood glucose of skipping meals?
I'm sorry, I lost the last part of your question.
What-
Audio.
What is the impact on blood glucose of skipping meals?
A normal person will not have a low blood sugar if he or she skips a meal. The only time that would happen in a normal person is maybe someone treated with insulin for diabetes or with another medication that causes insulin to be produced for diabetes, and then they don't eat. Yes, we can see the low blood sugar, but a non-diabetic person who doesn't eat will have a normal liver response and produce enough sugar to keep the sugar in the normal range. Our bodies are designed to maintain normal blood sugar, and skipping a meal will not cause a low blood sugar in a normal person.
What's the impact of alcohol abuse on blood glucose?
As I said earlier, when someone has a big binge of alcohol and then doesn't eat, that combination is required to cause low blood sugar. If you have an alcohol binge and eat, it's not going to happen.
You mentioned that you found significance in the potassium level of Mr. Cochrane at Raleigh General Hospital. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes. There are very few causes of low potassium. Let's go through them. If someone has severe diarrhea, they can lose potassium. If someone has very significant vomiting, copious tons of vomiting over and over and over for a long period of time, they can lose potassium. If someone is taking a diuretic that wastes potassium in the urine, they can have a low potassium. If someone has too much cortisol production over a long period of time by a tumor in either the adrenal or the pituitary, they could have low potassium. But really more the adrenal, not the pituitary. But another cause of low potassium is a high dose of insulin. In fact, for years we were treating high potassium with a combination of insulin and sugar. The reason is insulin drives sugar into the cell, and at the same time, it drives potassium into the cell. So it takes it out of the bloodstream and makes the potassium low. And as I told you, I had reviewed a lot of cases of insulin, people who received high doses of insulin in West Virginia and in Pennsylvania, and a good number of them also had low potassium for no other reason that you could determine.
Doctor, you also mentioned at Raleigh General there was a detection of benzodiazepine in Mr. Cochrane's body. How did Raleigh General determine that?
They did a urine screen, which is the first step, and is usually followed by a blood test, but that was not performed.
In this case, did the urine screen tell you the amount of the benzodiazepines in Mr. Cochrane's system?
No, it doesn't tell us the amount, and it doesn't even tell us when he might have taken it.
Can you expand on that, please?
Before.
I'm sorry?
The urine screen could be positive for a number of days after someone's taken a benzodiazepine.
And Doctor, what is the impact of taking insulin if you're a non-diabetic, basically a healthy person, and they receive insulin? What's the impact of that?
A healthy person who receives insulin, certainly a significant amount, will have a low blood sugar reaction because their own pancreas makes enough insulin, they don't need it, and it will drive the sugar down.
Is there any way to tell in retrospect how much insulin it would have taken for Michael Cochrane's blood glucose level to be at 21?
No, but it was likely a fair amount, enough to drive the potassium down and to lower the sugar to that very, very low level. The kind of studies that are done about how insulin works and how much is needed are done in first normal volunteers to see what the time course of action is of the insulin. And those patients are given the insulin and they're also given sugar back so they don't get sick from low blood sugar. And in patients with diabetes, we give a variety of doses depending on their needs. So we don't really have data. No one is experimenting with giving very large doses of insulin to normal people because they don't need it. And there's not a reason for us to know about
that. The result of a blood glucose level of 21 at Raleigh General Hospital, would that be the expected result if Mr. Cochrane had been given insulin that day?
Yeah.
Your Honor, it's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Selden.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Krieger. I'm Stanley Selden. I'm co-counsel for Natalie Cochran.
Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, how did you learn of this case and who hired you?
I received a call sometime in 2022, probably, from Mr. Hatfield.
Who was the prosecuting attorney at that time, correct?
Yeah.
Did Mr. Hatfield hire you on behalf of the prosecutor's office and the state of West Virginia?
Yes.
Okay. And they are paying your fee, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Just a few preliminary questions. Why does the body need blood sugar?
We need blood sugar to fuel our cells to do all the work of staying alive. The brain needs blood sugar to work. The muscles need it. It's the engine of life.
And how does blood sugar work in the body?
What do you mean?
What's the source of blood sugar in the body, and how does it affect the body? How does it work in the body?
Food is the source of blood sugar, but there's also a deposit of substances in the liver and the muscles to keep the blood sugar normal when we're not eating. After all, people sleep for 8 or 10 hours. They might not eat for 12 hours, yet the blood sugar is maintained.
Excuse me, doctor. I asked you, just a moment, Dr. Krieger. I asked, how does sugar work in the body?
It fuels the metabolism.
What is hypoglycemia?
Hypoglycemia means low blood sugar, usually defined as less than 55.
And how do you come up with that figure? Because the information I have is that in a 38-year-old male like Michael Cochrane, low blood sugar is defined as less than 70 milligrams per deciliter, not 55.
Well, like in many definitions, there are all sorts of sources that you might read, but the conventional level that I'm aware of from my reading and teaching is 55. 70 is what we might refer to. Below 70, some of the hormones might change in response to what the body might think is a falling blood sugar, but 70 is not defined as low blood sugar.
Is there any specific number or measure of blood sugar in a 38-year-old male Caucasian? What's the range of, quote, normal, unquote?
Well, that changes over time. These types of things are not fixed. Usually 80 to 100. Diabetes begins at 125, and pre-diabetes begins at 100. These are fasting levels.
Okay, so
levels will go up after meals.
all right, so from that answer, you said 80 and up, and then you talked about diabetes. So 70 actually would be low blood sugar level in a 38-year-old male Caucasian, correct?
No.
It's not.
Not
Okay.
concerningly low, no.
It's not within the normal limits that you just said. You said 80 to an upper number of 100, 120, something like that, right?
But 70 is not considered hypoglycemia.
All right.
I look at hundreds of laboratory reports a week, and I would not pay attention to 70
No.
in a healthy person.
All right. Let me move on.
Yeah, please do. This attorney's giving me the shits. Can you tell?
It's been suggested or alleged that Michael Cochran on February 6th of 2019 got an injection of insulin on that day. Now, they're referencing a specific type of insulin, Humalog Lispro insulin. That is what we call a
Oh,
fast-acting
you're telling an
type of
endocrinologist that?
insulin. Isn't
Really?
that correct?
Humalog or Lispro
Sure.
is a fast-acting insulin. Yes.
And if an injection of Lispro Humalog insulin is injected in a person, it takes approximately 15 minutes for it to start to work. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So if someone was injected with this specific type of insulin, they wouldn't just drop to the ground unconscious immediately. It would take some time for it to act. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
He didn't just drop to the ground. He gradually got worse
Now-
and worse.
This particular type of insulin
Mention the name.
works over a specified period of time. And that time period, when it's active or working in the body, is approximately 3 to 4 hours. Isn't that correct?
Well, that varies.
On people's metabolism.
Is that not a
That
good?
all depends.
Let me clarify. It works for at most 4 to 5 hours in the body. Isn't that correct? Under normal circumstances.
Under normal circumstances, but at high doses, it could last considerably longer.
That fucked you up, didn't it?
What do you consider a high dose?
Yeah, see?
Let me clarify that. If a 10 milliliter bottle of insulin was injected into a normal person, approximately how long would it be active in the body?
Well, that's a huge amount of insulin.
Yeah.
And we can't know how long it would be active, but we do know that massive doses and very high doses last a lot longer than conventional doses.
But you don't know how long that lasts, right?
What,
No one
yeah.
knows because no one would study that. It's
No. Let's
done
inject me with.
in healthy people, and wouldn't need to know that. So there's no information about that. But we do know that higher doses last longer.
Oh my God.
Is there any definitive information that says human Lispro insulin injected into the body works any longer than 7 hours, no matter what the
Don't
dose
change it to 7.
We don't have that information.
Okay.
But we don't know how many doses he got, how
Yep.
many injections he got.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
This guy's a tosspot.
Now, I believe you said that you recognized that a urine toxicology test was done on Michael Cochran
Mm. And what
when he was
that?
admitted on February 6, 2019 to the hospital. And that test was positive for benzodiazepines. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And this urine toxicology test or report could not tell you the identity or the blood level of benzodiazepines. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And we don't know the source of those benzodiazepines. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Are you aware that benzodiazepines can cause low blood sugar and hypoglycemia?
That's been reported, but as I said earlier, the vague. They
I've
don't
never heard that.
list the blood sugar levels. And in one paper that reports it, the blood sugar is listed in the 80s as average. So that is not
Okay.
clearly, it has not been clearly established.
So are you saying that benzodiazepines in someone can't cause low blood sugar?
I'm saying that we don't have a lot of information supporting that, and the information we do have is quite weak, as it is with a lot of other medicines that have been linked with hypoglycemia.
All right, let me move on to another question.
Please.
Are you aware that a drug overdose of benzodiazepines could cause what they call hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy with cerebral edema, which we'll call HIE?
No,
You're not aware that benzodiazepines can cause that condition, which includes cerebral edema?
no, I'm not.
Well, I would submit to you that HIE with cerebral edema is a condition that's essentially irreversible brain damage caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain with brain fluid on the brain, right? Isn't that the definition of HIE
Brain?
with edema?
Is it brain?
I can't comment since it's not a condition I'm familiar with, and I'm not a neurologist or expert in that topic.
Yeah.
So you don't know, correct?
Oh.
Yes,
He's definitely
Is hypoglycemia the only cause for cerebral edema? Because
Getting
you
additional
talk about
Richard Award
cerebral
points.
edema in your testimony previously.
no, it is not.
Okay. Isn't it true that other causes of cerebral edema include drug overdose,
she's
brain
Not-
cancer,
a neurologist.
tumors,
Kid. She just told you.
high altitude carbon monoxide poisoning, trauma, systemic infection, encephalitis, and hepatic encephalopathy?
That sounds like a reasonable list, none of which we know he has.
I didn't ask you that. You don't know if he had a drug overdose or not, correct?
Yes,
Wouldn't this cerebral edema, and again, that's fluid on the brain, from these other causes appear the same on a CT scan?
Yes. Fluid is fluid.
yes. Now, the brain tumor might not appear the same,
No.
because that would be localized.
Okay, but these other causes,
Bury the tumor.
could appear
So
on a
We'll
CT
look at
scan,
that.
correct?
Yes, yes.
And that CT scan shows brain damage. That's the reason to do a CT scan, right?
What?
The reason to do the CT scan in this case was that he had an altered consciousness.
And altered consciousness could mean he had damage to his brain, right?
Yes,
And a CT scan doesn't tell you the cause of cerebral edema, correct?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
It's a diagnostic tool. Your tool.
So to sum up these questions,
You're a wanker.
Michael Cochrane's cerebral edema, which was diagnosed, and might be the cause of his brain problems and ultimate brain death, isn't solely caused by hypoglycemia. Isn't that correct?
Well, you're asking me about Michael Cochran. I think the question I can answer is hypoglycemia is not the only cause of cerebral edema.
Okay, that's sufficient.
Yeah, cut her up. Shut her up.
You comment in your report that there were no other abnormalities to cause Michael Cochrane's hypoglycemia. Did you not see Michael Cochran's extremely elevated white blood cell count, which was above 17,000?
You had an infection.
I did see that,
Okay,
and that can be,
that's all I asked you. And for the jury's information, white blood cells in the body fight infections and toxins and things of that sort. Isn't that correct?
Should have been a nurse.
That's one of their functions.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and they can be raised by a number of things, not
Okay,
only.
that wasn't my question. My question was, one of their functions is to fight infection. And
Mhm.
you answered that, correct?
Yes,
Did you see the report in the emergency room that included infection for which he was given intravenous antibiotics?
he received 1 dose of an intravenous antibiotics because they were
Okay,
worried.
I just asked you if you saw the report that says he was given intravenous antibiotics, and your answer is yes. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Thank you. Now, an infection in the body can cause low blood sugar levels as well as insulin. Isn't that correct?
yes.
Just a moment, Your Honor. I want to review my notes very quickly.
All right.
I like how he calls it cerebral edema in the
Michael
brain.
Cochran was
When
admitted to the hospital on
cerebral
February 6th of
brain.
2019, and he received treatment at Raleigh General and CAMC in Charleston for approximately 5 days when he was discharged on February 11th of 2019 to hospice care. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
And during that whole time, with doctors treating him, doing various tests, going through everything to try and figure out what his problems were, there was no suspicion of insulin in his body, and they didn't do
Mhm.
any testing to definitively decide that. Isn't that correct?
unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Like saying an ATM machine.
All right, now I want
Snap.
to discuss Michael Cochran's glucose or blood level or blood sugar levels
How's
from the
that?
time he was
Great minds think
admitted on February 6th of 2019 at approximately 12 noon. And I have an exhibit, which I would like marked as defendant's next numbered exhibit.
He was not admitted at 12 noon, just to be correct.
I didn't say 12 noon. I just said he was admitted. Okay.
He's getting snarky.
Defendant's exhibit number 10, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And I have previously given a copy to you.
All right.
I'd like to put it on this viewer if possible, and I'm not real adept at that, so I could use some assistance.
All right. I'll ask the bailiff to assist.
You're not really adept at much.
We may not be able to do that, Mr. Selden, because I think we're using that device to project Dr. Krieger.
Is there any way I can project this onto the screen so the jury can see it?
We'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. We'll have to pass it from one juror to another.
Why can't we just slide this aside and use the viewer?
We can try. See what happens.
Because I'm going to be referring to specifics in this, and passing it from one jury to the other would probably take forever.
All right.
Your Honor, there was a suggestion by my co-counsel that perhaps we could take a break, make multiple copies of this to distribute to the jury so they can refer to it.
All
Why
right.
don't you do that?
That sounds like a
Mm.
plan. Ladies
would
and
be
gentlemen,
something
this is
to
a good time
organise.
for us to take our break. You may be getting tired of donuts at this juncture. You've eaten a lot of them, and the leftovers I usually eat. So it's bad whenever you leave a whole bunch of them. If you would like to have a different type of treat, tell the bailiff, and we will accommodate. We want your experience to be meaningful, and we will treat you like.
Do you enjoy your donuts? Oh God, he's back. Give you strength.
All right, members of the jury, you will see that you have a document matter shortly, and you can
To set that aside for a moment, I have a couple of questions before we get into it.
go ahead.
Now, Dr. Krieger, it's been alleged that Michael Cochrane took a variety of supplements, substances, or other
Oh, I have a treat for
undeclared
me.
medications. And because they've been undeclared, you don't have any idea what he was taking or what effect it had on his body. Wouldn't that be a fair question?
Have a fruit.
Okay. You said that you reviewed one autopsy report. Was that right?
Yes, prior to my writing of my 2023 report, yes.
Okay. Was that Dr. Kubitschek's report? He's the medical examiner for West Virginia. Is that the report you reviewed? Yes.
Yes.
Did you note in his conclusions that he said the cause of death and the manner of death was undetermined? Did you see that?
Yes.
Now I'd like to turn to defendants
It's just you.
exhibit number 10, which the jury has copies of. And you have a copy of that as well, Dr. Krieger, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at the top, it says, with a double asterisk, alleged event is approximately 12 p.m. on February 6, 2019. What that is referring to is that there's an approximation of what time Natalie Cochran, if at any time, she injected Michael Cochrane with insulin. That's all that means. And we don't have an exact time. It just says approximate time, 12 p.m. Do you note that at the top?
I haven't even seen a timeline to this.
Because there is no actual witness to Natalie Cochran injecting Michael Cochrane on February the 6th of 2019 with anything. We don't have a witness who's going to state that. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, also at the top, there is a note that says hypoglycemia is sugar, meaning blood sugar, less than 70 milligrams per deciliter in a person without diabetes. That's up for debate. You said under 55, I believe. Is that right?
That's right. The reason I said that is that when you testing.
I don't need you to go into any detail. I'm just clarifying what your statement was. Okay? Thank you. Now, this is a chart that has the date and time of testing for blood glucose in Michael Cochrane. First column is the date and the time, and unfortunately it's military time, but I'll go through that.
Oh my God.
The second
Why
column
didn't you do that dumb?
is the blood glucose level. The third column is the hours since the alleged event. Again, the alleged event is suspected
Is he
injection
taking
of
the
Michael
piss or
Cochrane
what?
with insulin. And the fourth column is, it says, was Lispro active in his body? Lispro is the Humalog insulin
Yeah.
alleged to be the subject of all of this controversy. Okay? Is that clear?
That clear?
Okay. And I hope it's clear to the jury. I'll move on. The first entry is February 6th, 2019, the date when Michael Cochrane was first admitted to the hospital. And it says 2020, which is 8:20 p.m. Do you note that?
Yes.
Okay. The second column says that
Is he
his
being
blood
facetious or
glucose
just made-
level was 21. Now, you've made a lot of comments about that. That's extremely low by anybody's calculation, right?
Yes.
Okay. The third column says that the time frame of the taking of that level is 8 hours and 20 minutes after the time Michael was supposed to be injected. Do you see that?
hmm
Yes.
Okay.
Now he's going to go back to the 7 hours of active.
Is it your testimony that the insulin, Humalog, Lispro, insulin, alleged in the case, could still be active in Michael's body
Won't be
8 hours and
active,
20 minutes
but his blood
after
sugar wouldn't have come
alleged
up
injection?
because he hasn't eaten anything.
It's possible if a very high dose was used or if additional doses were given.
I'm talking about a singular injection of Humalog
How do you know it
insulin.
was singular?
Would a
Nobody's
singular
got it.
injection, no matter the quantity, the volume,
Oh, it does
still
matter.
be active and causing effects in Michael Cochran's body 8 hours and 20 minutes after injection?
The quantity and volume does matter.
Is it your testimony that the Humalog insulin could still be active in Michael Cochran's body 8 hours and 20 minutes later? I don't, irregardless of the volume, I'm talking about a single injection. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Second column.
If he's not eating anything,
It's
his blood
dated
sugar's not going to
February
improve.
7th, 2019. That's the next day after Michael's in the hospital. It's 23, which is 12:23 a.m.
Oh,
The blood glucose level isn't available. The third column says 12 hours and 23 minutes after
What?
alleged
hang
injection
on,
of a
hang
single
on, hang on.
dose.
Did he just say his initial blood sugar was 21 and they didn't do another one for 12 hours? Inspect the chapter. I'm going to hear that.
The next day after Michael's in the hospital. It's 23, which is 12:23 a.m. The blood glucose level isn't available. The third column says 12 hours and 23 minutes after alleged injection of a single dose. Is it your testimony that Lispro, Humalog insulin can still be active in Michael Cochran's body?
Well, there's no additional hypoglycemia except a finger stick further down in the list. So
I'm just asking you, is it your testimony? And I don't care about the blood glucose level. I'm asking, can this type of insulin still be active in Michael Cochran's body?
It's not active, but its effects are still there. If you're not replacing the sugar, it's not going to improve. It won't go down anymore. Well, maybe it will, depending on how active you are. But yep, he's earned his award.
12 hours and 23 minutes later.
And that's disgusting.
it's
Like,
not like
they should have been doing that hourly. Like, even more than that.
Okay.
Especially if you had an altered conscious state. That's disgusting.
So the subsequent tests, well, let me go on.
No, really?
February 7th, 2019, 12:28 a.m. We don't know the blood glucose level. It's now 12 hours and 28 minutes. Is it still your testimony that the insulin is unlikely to be active in Michael's body at this time?
if only one injection were given at that time, yes.
If they've got no witnesses, they don't know how
Now,
many injections, do
the
they?
next entry is February 7th of 2019. It's 12:33 a.m. Now Michael's blood glucose is on the rise. It's going up. It's all the way up to 63,
Oh,
12 hours and 33 minutes later. Now, isn't it true that if there was a single injection and given this level, the insulin's no longer active?
It's on the improve.
Likely that it's not if it's a single injection and the blood sugar is not low.
That's all I asked you. Next entry, February 7th, 1:55 a.m. Blood glucose is on the rise. It's all the way up to 80, 13 hours and 55 minutes. The Lispro insulin's not active anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So if his blood sugar was at that level when he died, that wasn't the cause of death, was it? Just saying.
February
Plot
7th,
thickens.
2:17 a.m. Now his blood glucose is all the way up to 187, 14 hours and 17 minutes later. Lispro insulin, not active,
No.
cannot cause that reaction, correct?
Well, high blood sugar would be caused by insulin anyway, but yes.
And we don't know what time. They're doing things to try and raise Michael Cochran's glucose
Obviously.
level. They gave him an injection of dextrose D50 at the emergency room. That is an attempt to raise his blood glucose
You
level.
think?
Correct?
Yes.
Right. And it's taking effect. It's working. His blood glucose levels are going up, right?
Yes.
Depends how long he was at 21 for. How much
February 7th,
renal damage?
5:13 a.m. His blood glucose now drops all the way down to 44. 17 hours and 13 minutes later. How do you account?
Was he diagnosed as a diabetic or not? I don't think he was he? Wow. Was that doesn't add up. If his blood sugar drops that fast, that quickly, whilst he's in hospital. Well. Something's going on. I don't think it was the insulin that did it. I really want to hear the medical examiner.
Account for that.
Well, that one could be an outlier because that one was done by finger stick, not by blood, by finger prick. And
Sometimes you can get a different reading. Normally it's higher. I took it once. She shut him up with insulin and told him. Yeah. Yeah, but it was the cortisone. But even if she did give him the insulin and his blood sugar went down to the 21, it went right back up to the 187 whilst he was in hospital. So depends on how long he was at that 21 level 4 and how much damage it did to the kidneys. But yeah, it doesn't explain why it got from 187 all the way back down to 44 in the hospital. Unless he had the steroids still on board.
Per my review of the records, I didn't see that anything was done in response to that. And then the next one, shortly
Well,
later.
I just asked you.
She's trying to answer the question, Mr. Selden. Let her go ahead.
Okay.
You may continue, Ms. Krieger.
Thank you. What I was saying is that the finger stick at 44, according to my review of the records,
Oh, that's what I was saying. I once did a blood sugar on someone who had abnormal blood sugar like the hour before, and then did another one and it had skyrocketed. And it turns out that they'd had a jam sandwich and there was jam on their finger. So you just got to be careful.
Receive any action. So there was nothing given in response to that.
Oh!
And a short time later, the sugar was normal again. So
Sorry.
I don't really know if that has much meaning.
Okay.
What?
But you can say, since it's 17 hours and 13 minutes after the alleged injection of insulin, that insulin is not working in Michael's body at this time, correct?
Yes, we heard you.
His own insulin is likely working, but an injection given at noon would not likely be working.
Okay, I'm just asking about the single injection given at noon on February 6th. That's all these questions are directed at, okay?
Yes.
At 6:22 a.m. on February 7th, his insulin's on the rise again. It's up to 95, and that's within normal range according to your testimony. Isn't that right?
Mhm.
Yes, it's not insulin, it's glucose. But
Glucose, sorry. Okay. 18 hours, 27 minutes later, insulin not active in his body, correct?
yes, and that's a noon
Okay.
injection, yes.
Now, I'm not going to go through the other entries.
Oh, thanks up for that.
I'm sure the jury appreciates that.
Yeah.
But Michael's blood glucose levels are back on the rise, and now they're all the way up into at least normal range, and there's no activity or effect from a single injection of Humalog Lispro insulin alleged to have been given at approximately noon on February 6th. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we're done with that exhibit for now.
All right, I'll ask the bailiff to collect the copies.
Cochrane. 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 Cochrane.
All right.
Now, in your review of all of the records and everything you reviewed in this case, it has been alleged that Michael Cochran was using undeclared supplements or substances or other medications, and because it's not clearly in the records, you wouldn't have any idea what he was taking or its effects on his body. Wouldn't that be a fair statement?
Yes.
You state in your report in the conclusions, in summary, that Michael Cochran's, quote, hypoglycemia due to insulin administration is a strong possibility. So from that statement, you cannot say that insulin was the one and only factor that caused Michael Cochran's hypoglycemia.
She didn't say that.
Isn't that correct?
It's the only credible explanation since none of the other explanations work.
I didn't ask you if it was credible. I said you cannot say it's the one and only. You're only stating it's a strong possibility, correct?
Yes.
Okay. To what degree of medical certainty is a strong possibility? What is that?
That's not quantified.
What is beyond reasonable doubt?
I believe that's all the questions I have at this time. Thank you.
All right, redirect Mr. Truman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, this started off some time ago by asking who is paying you to be here today, and you
Who's on
responded with the
first?
state.
What's on second?
Would the fact that the state's paying you cause you to alter your testimony or your opinions in any manner?
No.
Defendant's 10. Doctor, defendant's exhibit number 10, which was a document emailed to you while we were on a break, that's based on some assumptions that there was a single dose at noon. There is nothing in States 10 that would eliminate the possibility of multiple injections of insulin. Is there?
Objection, Your Honor, that's not the facts and evidence.
Overruled.
You can answer, doctor, please.
Yes, it's very likely that there was another injection or another type of insulin in addition or to the Lispro.
There was some discussion about benzodiazepines and Michael Cochran. Is there anything in the records that would cause you to believe that that would be responsible for his low blood glucose level?
No, and in fact, an allergy to a benzodiazepine was noted in his record. When we have a patient who has an allergy to one benzodiazepine, we caution them not to have others. So I don't know how to reconcile all of that, what the allergy was about, and whether he would have why he would have taken that medication.
One theory presented to you by the defense was that it might have, his blood glucose level may have dropped because of a drug overdose. Is there any evidence whatsoever that Michael Cochran overdosed on any drug other than insulin?
What was his toxicology report?
There was also the matter of the high white blood count. And you started to address that issue and you were stopped. So let me give you the opportunity to explain the treatment and the end result of the high white blood count.
Yes. Well, it's true that we see a high white blood cell count with infection. It's not the only cause. When blood sugar goes extremely low, other hormones rise. And those hormones, particularly cortisol, will cause white blood cells to look high. We see this a lot in patients who have excess cortisol for other reasons, and that's a possible explanation. Since there was no evidence for infection, he didn't have a fever, he didn't have a low blood pressure. I'm talking about enormous infection that would cause a low blood sugar. Fever, no low blood pressure, no evidence of infection on exam, and a negative blood culture after the single dose of antibiotic that would not have tamed a rip-roaring infection bad enough to cause a low blood sugar.
How would you expect a non-diabetic person to physically react if they were given insulin? What kind of symptoms would you expect to see?
Low blood sugar.
There's a cascade of events that occur. As the sugar begins to drop, people feel sweaty, shaky, they can have pounding in their chest, palpitations, we call it. We can have, people then can proceed to seizure, to coma, which is from the brain cell edema that we've talked about. So that's a cascade from hunger, shakiness, sweating, pounding in the chest, to seizure, coma.
Felix, what are you doing?
You had indicated that 55 was the number you considered to be a low blood glucose. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yes, in the testing we do when we are trying to figure out why someone has a low blood sugar, and we can't explain it yet, we use 55 as the cutoff, and we don't do the extra testing until the blood sugar is less than 55. When there are symptoms, less than 45 when there are no symptoms. So 55 is our cutoff for the testing.
Okay. When Michael Cochran went to Raleigh General and his blood glucose was measured at 21.
Yes. What?
And this may be out of your field, and if so, just say so, but had the damage already been done by that time?
That's what I thought.
Well, the brain edema had already started, yes.
That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
Recross Mr. Selden.
Need to approach the bench.
All right.
Guilty as charged. The next witness is EARL GLIEM, who is the FBI forensic examiner in firearms and toolmarks unit. He'll be the one to tell us if there was a puncture, no doubt, in the top of the bottle. She does look guilty. She looks smarmy and smug. I don't like it. I don't like it. Hell. Oh. Play.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm glad to see smiling faces instead of scowling faces. You guys are the greatest. Thank you so much for coming in on this rather terrible weather day. It was 3 degrees at my house this morning, and it felt like 1. So thank you for coming
Did I go
in,
way back again?
being prompt
I did.
and doing your civic duty.
God.
I hope you had a good long weekend and rested well, and you are ready to continue with the trial.
My bad.
Defendant's exhibit number 10, Your Honor.
Thank you.
What's this? Yeah.
And I have previously given a copy to.
All right.
I'd like to
Can we
put
see
it
this?
on this viewer if possible, and I'm not real adept at that, so I could use some assistance.
Yes.
All right. I'll ask the bailiff to assist. All right. Who has the photographs?
Hang on. I've gone too far. Sorry.
Again, I would have to speculate, but sometime later in that afternoon.
It was after this, wasn't it? Yes. Oh. Oh. Okay.
All right. Further questions, Mr. Selden?
Thank you, Your Honor. There has been testimony throughout this trial that Natalie Cochran allegedly injected Michael Cochrane sometime around noon when he collapsed. Then there were people constantly checking. There were people constantly in and out of the house, numerous witnesses, people coming over, staying with Natalie, checking on Michael. So, and then Michael goes into the hospital at approximately 8 p.m. And he's in the hospital from February 6th of 2019.
I think that would probably go against her. She's got, she doesn't need to poke any holes in this case. I'd be surprised if they actually even had a defense. Maybe 1 or 2, perhaps. Just guessing. A couple of experts on, endocrinologists and stuff, but I can't think of anything else.
Through and including February 10th or 11th.
I certainly
when he
don't
goes
think
to the
that they've-
hospice and passes away.
I've
When would there
raised their
be
burden.
an opportunity for Natalie Cochran to inject him multiple times, given those facts?
Objection, that's beyond the scope of an endocrinologist's expertise.
Sustained.
From a scientific point,
You got to put a different
based
spin
on the
on it now.
records which note Michael's glucose levels,
Mhm.
etc., when would additional injections occur to have the result of altering blood glucose levels, etc.? We went all through that chart of the extensive testing and recording of his blood glucose levels from approximately 8 p.m. on February 6th through his stay at the hospital. Scientific evidence, when would an injection of insulin have occurred to have those results?
You're asking me to speculate.
I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm
You are.
asking you, given the scientific medical evidence of blood glucose levels,
They vary
February
from
6th
person to
through his
person.
stay, like every 15 minutes, every half hour, when would those scientific information show another injection of insulin?
Well, we really have to explain the 21 because the other one, there's only one low, and that's finger stick that wasn't treated and normalized without treatment. So it's really explaining the 21.
Okay, and the 21 was recorded initially or stated initially by a supposed witness, Ms. Hamilton. She's the one that said it was 21 when Michael was admitted to the hospital approximately 8 p.m. Do you recall that?
Wait a minute.
No, that was the
Wait,
one-
objection.
Just wait a minute, doctor. Go ahead, Mr.
That
Truman.
wasn't the testimony. That came from Raleigh General 21, not Stephanie Hamilton.
All right,
This is a misleading question.
I'll withdraw it and I'll stand corrected.
Okay.
The 21 was when he was admitted to Raleigh General Hospital, approximately 8 p.m. When would Natalie Cochran have an opportunity to inject him to cause that decrease in glucose?
Again, I would have to speculate, but sometime later in that afternoon.
The prosecutor asked you on redirect about the white blood cell count. And the
Oh, this is
simple
great, Ross,
explanation
isn't
of
it?
that is we don't know the cause of the extreme elevation of the white blood cells. Isn't that correct?
No, there are certainly hypotheses that can be rendered, including.
Well, we don't, just a moment, we don't actually know. There weren't any definitive tests that would account for the elevated white blood cell count. Isn't that correct?
Tests for what?
Yes.
You're testing for infection. That's what you test for.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Very well.
There weren't any tests to test the white blood cell count.
I don't have any more questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Truman, anything further?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well. Is there any reason to hold this witness at all?
Not so far as the state's concerned.
All right.
Any reason from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You are excused.
Thank you.
Now we have the FBI forensic examiner, EARL GLIEM. Now I can L. Hopefully I get it right this time. No.
To be called Mr. Truman.
Yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Acord.
Sir, can you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Earl Gleam. First name is spelled E-A-R-L. Last name is Gleam, G-L-I-E-M.
And how are you currently employed?
I am a physical scientist, forensic examiner, working in the Firearms and Toolmarks unit of the FBI laboratory located in Quantico, Virginia.
Where did you attend school?
I attended school at West Virginia University. I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Forensic and Investigative Sciences there. And more recently, I completed a Master's of Science at the University of Florida in pharmaceutical science with a concentration in forensic science as well.
What sort of professional training do you have?
So as an examiner, as a physical scientist forensic examiner at the FBI laboratory, before we are qualified to perform independent
I think we can
casework, we go there.
You ever
be there for 10
All right,
minutes.
Mr. Selden, do you wish to engage in voir dire pertaining to this witness's qualifications?
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Yes, Your Honor, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
What exactly are you being qualified as an expert in? What is your represented area of expertise?
So in the Firearms and Toolmarks unit, my main job duties include the examination of tools and firearms, as well as the items that those tools and firearms come into contact with. I examine both the tools and firearms, determine makes and models, as well as the types of actions that they can produce, as well as if any microscopic marks of value are present on the surfaces that they come into contact with. I can then do examinations on those marks to determine whether or not those marks were originated from a particular tool or not.
So what you're saying in summary is that you are an alleged expert in the external examination of these objects. Does that be a fair assumption or statement?
Could you explain what you mean by external?
You don't take the contents of, for instance, the vials out. You don't do any chemical analysis. You're talking about how the vial looks from an external view and a microscopic examination of the outside of these objects.
with an object like that, yes, I do not do any chemical examination.
No objection. Accepted.
All right, the court declares this witness to be an expert within his described field of forensic examinations. You may continue, Ms. Akert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Glenn, did you write a report in this case?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'd like to have marked what I am holding as State Exhibit 19.
Yes, no, yes. This is State Exhibit number 19, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And this has been shown to the defense, Your Honor.
Very well.
Some of the tools, you mean?
Your Honor, wish to approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Gleam, I've handed you what is labeled as Laboratory Division Supporting Documentation Envelope. Can you look over that and advise the court if that is the report that you prepared in this matter?
State's Exhibit 19 is a copy
Mr.
of
Reese,
all
you
of
got to sleep.
the material that I produced as part of this case, to include the report, my case notes, as well as some additional documentation as well.
And what items did you review in this case?
I reviewed, excuse me. Well, there's two different designations that we use for them. In the laboratory, we assigned
What are
them
you
item 2
starting to
and
fight for?
item 4. At the field office level, when they were first received by the field office, which was Pittsburgh in this case, they gave them the designators 1B1 and 1B2.
B1 and
Thank you.
B2.
What has been marked and handed
Not as
as
pajamas.
State Exhibit 10 and State Exhibit 14. Could you please open those and identify them for me?
Do I need gloves to handle mine?
Do we have some gloves, Deputy Fry? Hold on.
Thank
and we'll
you.
get some.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sauerkraut. You just said the magic word for it. You guys are weird. I'll stick with my cherries and mango. He loves it. Were you there yesterday when he was saying how much he loves acidic foods? Oh, it was Elizabeth, I think. You have any Dutch or German ancestry? What are we waiting for?
Eureka, we found a box of
It's
gloves.
in November.
Can you message poor Stephen to tell him that we found some?
Thank you. That's okay.
Ill, no thanks. I
Maybe
have
for
to,
children, however.
I have to take immune suppressants because of the drugs that I have to take for my arthritis. So my body doesn't reject them. It's sort of like the whole, what they do with cancer drug type of thing. You take the immune suppressants. So I get ulcers in my mouth, which is why you'll see me constantly putting mouthwashes and stuff. But yeah, if I had pickled cauliflower, oh my lord, there it is. Oh, that's the waiting for gloves.
Goodness.
the face he makes.
Might go through the whole box.
Oh,
All right. I'm sorry, what was your
ripped
original
it
question?
he's ripped it to shreds.
So this one. So States Exhibit 10 is a vial.
Mm-hmm.
And did you examine that vial?
So I don't see my marking specifically on it. However, most of it is covered with the
I'm
States Exhibit
sorry.
sticker.
I'm gonna
It
have to. I have to screenshot it. What's the point? What's the point of putting gloves on? Mm-hmm. Oh. I waited all that time. Oh, come on, start. What the? Start. Yeah, like an L.
Thank you.
Oh, come on. Oh, yeah.
Might go through the whole box. All right. I'm sorry. What was your original question?
Did you identify those items for me?
So
States 10.
this one. So States Exhibit 10 is a vial.
And did you examine that vial?
So I don't see my marking specifically on it. However, most of it is covered with the States Exhibit sticker. It does appear very consistent with my photograph of the item 2 vial that I examined in the laboratory.
And we refer to that photograph. I'm going to try to fix this. I know this is hard to see.
Uh-huh.
Trying to make this as visible as I can for everyone in the room. Is this the set of photographs that you're referring to?
Yes, that's correct.
And what are we looking at in these photographs?
It's called disgusting.
We're
That's what
looking
it's called.
at the photographs that I took during my examination of the item 2 vial. There were numerous pieces, so I just took it from different angles, as well as the different components, as well as a close-up of the rubber stopper that I was asked to examine.
And before we move on to stage 14, we'll just stick with stage 10. What sort of testing did you perform on this stopper, this vial?
I was asked to examine the rubber area at the center here to determine if there were any puncture marks in the rubber top of the vial.
And what conclusions did you reach?
I did not detect any punctures or defects in that rubber stopper.
Oh.
What does the lack of a puncture in that bottle indicate to you?
I need to interrupt.
Oh.
Are we talking about item number 2, which was later marked as item number IB-1? Is that what we are talking about?
That's my understanding of what we're talking about, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the last question. What does the lack of any puncture in the septum of this bottle indicate to you?
It indicates that it was not forcibly contacted by any other object to obtain the contents inside of it.
Now, could you please identify States Exhibit 14?
Yes.
Is that the same bottle that you performed testing on in your laboratory?
Yes, it is. This is the item 4 vial that I examined in the laboratory. And I recognize both my initials and name and date on the outer packaging, as well as some of the inner packaging here. Excuse me. as well as my initials on the item itself.
And the photographs that I placed on the overhead that should also appear in front of you on that screen, are these photographs that you took of that bottle and septum during testing?
Yes.
And additionally, did you take these photographs of the septum during testing as well?
Yes, I did.
What sort of testing did you perform on State's exhibit?
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt for a moment. I'm getting a call from Dr. Banerjee. She's probably telling me she's.
All right, take the call.
Thank you. Your Honor, there is difficulty with Dr. Banerjee. She's, wish to approach you.
Yes, please. All right, please continue, Ms. Akron.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. GLIEM, with regard to State's exhibit 14, which is also identified as item number 4, what type of testing did you perform?
It was mostly a visual examination where I was looking for defects in that rubber top of the vial.
What were the results of that testing?
I detected one defect in the center of the rubber stopper that was consistent with a puncture mark that penetrated through the entire rubber stopper of the vial.
And has anything come to your attention since conducting your original testing on both State's Exhibit 10 and State's Exhibit 14 that would lead you to change any of your conclusions at this time?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor, and I would move State's 19 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Selden?
No objection, no.
State's exhibit number 19 will be admitted into evidence. You may cross-examine Mr. Selden.
Sorry, Your Honor, I need to get my copy of the report.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Stanley Selden. I'm co-counsel for the defendant, Natalie Cochran.
And the dipshit.
Welcome to the courtroom.
Morning, afternoon.
Welcome to the court.
How do you pronounce your last name?
GLIEM.
GLIEM. Okay. As GLEAM, even though that's not the spelling.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Like KNOB.
Excuse me, just a moment, Your Honor. I need to collect my thoughts on this.
All right.
It was a little confusing in some of the testimony. All right, Mr. GLIEM, as to your report on item number 2, which I believe was State's exhibit number 10. I'm calling your attention to that one, okay?
Yes.
That was a vial that has a large top. And can we have the photographs of that so that we can put them on the viewer?
All right. Who has the photographs?
Photographs are within the report, Your Honor.
I wonder where Tanya is. I haven't seen her for a bit.
And hopefully I can get this on the viewer so everyone can see it.
Well, let's hope.
And could I get some assistance in turning this on?
It is okay.
Okay, good. There we go. Mr. GLIEM, are these the photographs that you took of, and I believe your description included item number 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
You did external examinations of this, and by that I mean you didn't empty out the contents, you didn't analyze the contents. That was done by somebody else, correct?
Mhm.
That's correct.
And you say no punctures or defects were present on the top or bottom of the surfaces of the rubber stopper. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
The metal ring, and I believe you're talking about this right here.
Yes.
You can see that? And that's the metal ring that would have been around here and right here. Is that right?
Correct. I didn't necessarily examine the metal ring because I believe it had been manipulated before it got to me to remove the contents.
So you can't make any conclusions about that because it was manipulated before it got to you.
Correct. I was only asked to examine the rubber stopper inside of the metal ring.
And this rubber stopper had no defects or punctures or anything like that that you could see. Is that right?
Not that I was able to detect.
Do you know what substances were represented to be in this vial by other testers?
No, I don't.
Very well. Let's look at this item, which is listed as item number 4. And these are photographs taken by you of this item, correct?
Yes.
Now, you said in examination of this item that you believe, and this item seems to indicate right here, this is Humalog insulin. Would you agree with that label?
Yes, that is how it was labeled.
Now, you say that upon examination, you believe that there was a puncture in the rubber piece right here, correct?
Yes, I believe you lost it on the top there.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we're back on, and hopefully I won't touch anything again.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. This indication right here, with this circle that I believe you put on the photograph, right?
Yes, the dashed circle as well as that arrow to like kind of the top right were indicators put on the photograph by me to just give further clarification on the notes.
So from your examination, you believe that was a puncture in the rubber stopper, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You cannot tell if this was a single puncture or if there might have been, no, I'm going to scratch that. You cannot tell when this alleged puncture mark was made, correct?
No, I cannot.
So one had a hole and one didn't.
Lieutenant Bledsoe, who gathered this item from, I believe it was 211 4H Lake Road, says that when he retrieved this item, it was full and unopened.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe that's ever been stated. Lieutenant Bledsoe has not even testified yet.
Yes, that's true. I must sustain the objection. You can rephrase, Mr. Selden.
From a visual examination, you cannot tell if this was opened or not. You're only stating there was a puncture in the top, right?
Yes, I only observed I only examined the rubber stopper, and this is the result of my examination.
And from your examination, you can't tell who made this puncture mark, correct?
No, I cannot.
You did a visual examination of the bottle, et cetera. Were there any fingerprints on the bottle?
I did not examine the bottle for fingerprints.
A moment, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
And also, in addition to those questions, not only can you not tell who made the puncture mark, but you can't tell when it was made, correct?
No, I cannot.
One moment, Your Honor, I need to confer.
All right.
Wakey, wakey.
Mr. Cochrane of the Cochrans of the Cochrans. When Mr. Cochrane for the Cochrans, Mr. Cochrane,
Mr. Cochran's.
Natalie Cochran, Miss Cochrane, Mr. Cochrane.
That says Michael Cochran.
It says Michael Cochran.
It says Michael Cochran.
Michael Cochran.
Cochrane's.
Michael Cochran.
Cochrane tacticals.
However, Mr. Cochran.
And they said they can't do anything. You're a cunt. You can't say that. Plain simple. Just like that. Simple. Can't. You can't say that. Oh, I had way too much fun making that. Cochrane. Cochrane.
Now, the metal ring that you were talking about, and that vial that may or may not have been opened, et cetera, you stated that, and that was item 2, I believe. You stated that had been manipulated previously, so you couldn't really tell much about it, correct?
Your Honor, may I refer to my notes? I made a note specific to the metal ring that might help me better answer that question.
Okay. Is it in your report?
It's the same copy as the State's Exhibit 19, which is just my copy.
I can give him the report.
Okay. Yeah. If you don't mind, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would it be all right if I stand here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just don't lean over too far.
Oh, sorry.
So on my notes, I indicated that the metal ring was loose and easily removed to separate the rubber stopper from the ring. So the metal ring appeared like it had been manipulated prior to myself receiving it because it was so easily removable.
Okay. And I want to show that on the viewer. This is the vial, not the one marked Humalog. It has a label that represents methylprednisone, and you believe, based on your examination, that this one was manipulated, correct?
Well, I don't have all of the documents from the other unit of the laboratory, but I believe it did go to other units of the laboratory before I received it. So it's possible that they might have removed that ring to access the contents. It's possible.
Item number 4. From a visual examination of this bottle, can you tell if it's full of liquid or not?
I believe it was empty when I received it.
So how do you believe the contents were removed?
I don't have any information on that.
I need to confer with counsel one more time, and I think I'm like.
Okay.
Now, according to your report, items number 2 and items number 4 were found approximately 4 to 5 months after Michael Cochran's death on February 11th of 2019. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of when they were recovered. Well, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. There are various documents appended to your report, which you reviewed. It's part of your report. From that description, do you believe this item was seized by police or other authorities approximately 4 months after Michael Cochran's death on February 11th of 2019?
I don't have any awareness of a collection of this item of evidence. I can only speak to when it was received into the FBI laboratory and when I worked in the laboratory. And that's all I can say about the custody of that item.
Okay, I'm going to hand you this report back. I have a few more questions. So looking at that report, when were these 2 items, number 2 and 4, received in your laboratory?
So to best answer your question, this evidence, I don't have the full chain of custody printouts for each of these items present in my notes printouts. That's information that's typically part of the evidence management unit package that is created for these items that kind of covers the whole lifespan of the whole chain of custody of the movement of the items through the entire laboratory.
Right, and I'm not asking you about all that. I just want to know when these 2 items came into the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, as far as your investigation.
So the initial communication from the field office about this request for laboratory examinations was initiated on February 9th, 2021.
Okay. And so it can be assumed that came into Quantico about February of 2021.
Yes, approximately. So the communication was initiated on February 9th, and then the initial notes done by the evidence management unit were created on February 10th of 2021.
Okay. So Michael Cochran passed away February 11th of 2019, and this crucial evidence has come into your lab 2 years later. Is that what you're saying?
Those are the dates that are indicated as when we received items in this case.
Okay. You were assigned the items on July 30th of 2021, and you completed your report January 31st of 2022. Isn't that right?
Yes, that appears correct.
Almost 4 years after Michael Cochran's death, correct? If his death occurred February 11th of 2019.
I'm not familiar with the specifics of the case, but if his death occurred in 2019, I completed my exams in 2022, that would be 3 years.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Redirect Ms. Akron.
Mr. Gleam, through your investigation of State's Exhibit 14, the bottle is labeled Humalog, I believe also identified as item 4. Is it true that you were unable to determine how many times an object had passed through the puncture you identified?
Objection as to the form of the question.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
Were you able to determine how many times any item had passed through that puncture?
No, I was not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further, Mr. Selden?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may step down, Mr. Gleam. You are excused.
Thank you.
Make sure you
Oh,
leave
really?
all the
You're
exhibits
terrible.
here, please.
Yes, sir.
And our gloves.
Yes, sir. I broke more than I used.
That's all right. We won't charge you. Members of the jury, we'll take our lunch break now. Please do not expose yourselves to any
And
reports.
expose yourselves. Really? Really? Jury, don't expose yourselves, okay? Whatever you do, do not expose yourselves. All right, my lovelies. It's 5:15, and it's my nice time. Because as you can see, I definitely need that beauty sleep. So we will do tomorrow, or day 4, afternoon, tomorrow. Okay. Cochrane. I feel like I'm sitting really low. I'm like hiding behind my my name. It's not a bad thing, really. All right, my darlings, thank you very much for hanging around. I've tried to that was fun yesterday, sending that doing that redirect, and I'm going to do it again today. You know what? Because I can, and because the more you do it, the more it gets returned. Yeah. Not silly. Let me just make sure that he's on, because I think they had a verdict today. In his trial, I think, and I don't even know how long this one's going to go for. I don't want that one. I want this one. Thank you. Yes, he's live. Oh, still jury deliberations. Cool. All right. I am going to say good night and redirect you to say hi to RA. Defense Rest Raid. I'll see you over there. Bye-bye.
Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests.